Now live from CBS 4 Weather Control, this is a Hurricane Katrina update.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Elliot Rodriguez. Right now you're looking at live pictures. Hurricane Katrina releasing its full fury on the Gulf Coast of the United States. People who did not get out of time in the Big Easy are experiencing the devastating power of the storm firsthand. And part of the Superdome's roof in New Orleans blown away as thousands sit inside seeking shelter from this very powerful Category 4 storm. Right now, I want to shift focus a little bit from what's happening in New Orleans and that whole Gulf region of the United States, Louisiana, and other parts, to what's happening here in South Florida and in Florida in general. Waiting for a news conference with Florida Governor Jeb Bush. He has already declared disaster areas in Miami-Dade and Broward counties. And as soon as we get that news conference, we're going to go to Governor Jeb Bush. Meantime, CBS 4 storm specialist David Bernard has been tracking Katrina's landfall on the Gulf Coast since early this morning. David joins us now with the latest. David?
Elliot, we have a new position in from the Hurricane Center. Latitude 30 north, longitude 89.6 west. 3090 is downtown New Orleans, so it's right on top of them, 30 miles east-southeast of the business district of New Orleans, 135-mile-per-hour winds moving to the north at 15 miles per hour. A devastating situation ongoing in New Orleans right now. In fact, look at this satellite picture, the last images. You see the western side of the eye wall, how it's enhanced? That's why they have some of the worst weather going on right now. Elliot?
Okay, thank you, Dave. We want to go to that news conference and Florida Governor Jeb Bush.
Remains very, very dangerous. We stand ready to assist these states as they determine how we can best help their needs. And Craig will talk a little bit about what's available and what's been asked for by our neighbors to the west. Additionally, we have in Florida, as you know, a great emergency response team, and we're doing our best to address the needs of our residents, both in South Florida as well as in Northwest Florida, in order to free up federal assistance for our neighboring states. The hope is that we can deal with these issues ourselves and allow for the folks at FEMA to focus where the damage is more severe. We've spoken to the heads of Florida's major hospital systems, and each has offered support. We're creating a census of the open beds in case hospitals are downed in our neighboring states. We want to be able to provide assistance first and foremost to the most vulnerable citizens in those areas. Right now, as I said, we're compiling a list of available assets, including bed capacity and, of course, nursing resources and other supplies that our hospitals can share with our Panhandle residents as well as our neighboring states. Throughout the day and in the days to come, Floridians, especially those in the Panhandle area, must be vigilant. Please don't just focus on the skinny black line. These tropical force winds are all already impacting the Panhandle, and it has the potential, as all storms do, to create havoc after the storm goes through our communities. It is important to listen to local officials as they give you instructions on whether it's appropriate to go outside or not, and please, just as a reminder again, remember that more people die after storms, and 11 have tragically died so far with Hurricane Katrina in South Florida. 11 confirmed deaths. Most of those died actually after the storm had passed. So it is important for people to be vigilant, to protect their families, and make sure that they follow the warnings of local officials about potential water contamination, road closures, down power lines, and other important information. Florida was granted a presidential disaster declaration yesterday for Broward and Miami-Dade County, and this will provide public assistance to state and local governments for the emergency work that is already underway. Currently, there are 21 shelters open in the Panhandle. They're serving more than 1,500 residents. We don't have an actual count of the number of people that are from other states, but my guess is that quite a few people evacuated to the east and are in our shelters, as well as people that have special needs in our own communities that have gotten quite used to being able to take advantage of the special needs shelters that we have. We have 5 special needs shelters open, and currently there are 68 special needs residents in those. South Florida and Panhandle residents must remain cautious as additional rain may increase flooding. As I said, there have been 11 confirmed deaths. 2 confirmed deaths occurred from carbon monoxide poisoning, which reminds me to once again ask everyone to follow the instructions on the use of generators. Those 2 deaths that occurred because a generator was being used inside of one's home. It is not appropriate to use generators, just as it wouldn't make sense to drive your car into your house and keep the car turned on. It doesn't make any sense at all to use a generator inside as well. There have been 33 confirmed carbon monoxide poisoning events as of last night, and with the increased use of generators, it's important for people to follow those rules. Florida Power and Light is working quickly to ensure all customers have their power restored as soon as possible. As of 7 a.m. this morning, less than 1% of the residents of Monroe County were without power. 11%, which is just slightly over 100,000 customers in Broward County, are still without power. And in Dade County, 22%, or 212,000 customers, are without power. And we are beginning to see power outages, of course, in Northwest Florida. As it relates to fuel, we are working very closely with the United States Department of Energy and the petroleum industry to ensure we maintain fuel supplies and shipments into our ports. We continue to experience localized fuel shortages, and I would ask that people be patient to make sure that they take care of their own needs, but also recognize that their neighbors need gasoline as well. Fuel supply is no longer just an issue for Floridians, by the way. This will be a regional and perhaps national issue for the short run as we assess, as the damage to the refineries is assessed. If there is damage, it could create significant problems. In the interim, we are going to do what we can, working with our partners in the federal government and with these oil companies to make sure that Floridians do have access to gasoline, that the alternative supplies of fuel from other sources than just in the Gulf are contracted so that we can make sure that we continue to get gasoline into our ports. With that, I would like to ask Craig Fugate to talk a little bit about the specific relief and recovery efforts that are underway.
Thank you, Governor Bush. Now that we've been declared by President Bush as a major disaster area, FEMA and the state are in a unified command and response to the impacts of Katrina to Florida. Although a lot of focus is in on the Orleans area and Mississippi, where the eye wall is coming across the area right now, we're still going to receive significant impacts on our coastal communities, and we must continue to be vigilant and prepared to respond to those counties as they need that assistance. But in addition to that, we have begun receiving requests from other states and currently are in the process of deploying what we would call an incident management team that will be made up of local officials from, we're working right now with Duval and Dixie County to actually go in. They've reportedly have lost one of the county EOCs along the coast in Mississippi, and we expect additional requests of that type. These resources are being mobilized now and will be deployed as soon as the conditions permit. We are also now starting to receive requests for National Guard assets. Those are being processed, and as those requests come in, we will be dispatching those, as well as sending some specialists such as public information officers and logistics specialists. We anticipate as the damage becomes evident, particularly along the coastal areas, we will continue to receive more requests, and we are prepared under the direction of Governor Bush to meet the challenges both of our Florida communities that are being impacted and have been impacted by this storm, but as well as our neighboring states who gave so generously to Florida. At this time, I'd just briefly like Justin DeMello, who's our federal coordinating officer, to come up and introduce himself and brief you on what we are doing in support of our Florida counties. Justin.
Thank you, Craig. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to say that we do have that declaration for public assistance for the 2 southern counties. We're currently...
Okay, you heard there Governor Jeb Bush, along with other state officials, briefing Floridians on the latest situation, which is that presidential disaster declarations have been declared in Miami-Dade County and Broward County. That's good news for anybody seeking federal assistance, because that will now free up a lot of federal dollars for aid here in South Florida and, of course, North Florida bracing for the storm. CBS 4's Jennifer Donnellan is right now in Baton Rouge, Louisiana this morning, live, joining us with the latest on what's going on there. Jennifer?
Hi, we are in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and we are 70 miles west of the city of New Orleans. We are on the outer edges of the storm, if you take a look at your satellite map, and this is what we are dealing with, and we've been dealing with this all morning long. These sustained winds, right now, I'm clocking them at about 20 miles an hour. It just feels much stronger than that. Yeah. Give me a second. Okay. They're coming. We are getting these really strong gusts. I can't even imagine what the situation is like in New Orleans. We are receiving reports, though, some of the Teflon coating atop the Superdome, and that's where we has come off. We've got 35,000 people there hunkering down, riding the storm out there. This is a very powerful storm, a very massive storm. Many of the residents who were ordered to evacuate from the city of New Orleans came here to Baton Rouge. We evacuated with them yesterday. It took us 6 hours on the highway to get to Baton Rouge, and that's normally a 1-hour drive max. So authorities here are urging people to stay inside their homes, because this obviously is not a safe situation. And because of the size of the storm and the rate at which it's moving, whatever's in its path, whomever's in its path, is going to be in a dangerous situation for several hours to come.
How well protected are you there to your, it looks like open space to your left, but is there a strong building to your right protecting you from the wind?
Yep, I've got a building right in front of me. Right now, this is a casino hotel right here on the Mississippi River. That's the levee right there. Fortunately, the Mississippi is the lowest it's been in years, so flooding is not going to be the type of issue or the type of concern as it's going to be in New Orleans. The good news is for New Orleans, but the bad news for Mississippi is that this storm seems to have passed the east of New Orleans, so when all is said and done, we may find out that we averted a major, major disaster. But we have a crew right now in Biloxi, Mississippi. They are getting hammered right now. They had to stop doing live shots. They were unable to transmit. They had to get back to their hotel rooms, get to a safe place and hunker down and wait out the worst of this storm. And this is one powerful storm. I know you there in Miami are all too well aware of that.
Well, what we're thinking here, Jennifer, in Miami, is that we got substantial damage with a Category 1 storm, and we're still dealing with the recovery from that storm. Our hearts go out to folks in that area who are now dealing with a much more powerful storm. The people that you spoke with in that region, did they have good experience with hurricanes? Were they taking this as seriously as they should have?
I think so, and I think we were in West Palm Beach, we were in Singer Island when the storm was a Category 1 and came ashore. And I think people watched that because that was, I think we have to lose the term minimal hurricane, because that storm came ashore. We lost 9 lives, 11 lives there in Florida as a result of this storm. I think the rest of the nation watched that. The storm came over the Gulf of Mexico. People here in Louisiana well aware that that is warm waters right there and that the storm was going to strengthen. I think everyone was shocked when we looked up and saw it was a Category 5. And they started really getting serious about this. I was watching the local forecasters both in New Orleans and here in Baton Rouge, and you could truly sense fear in their voices as they were trying to relay to the public and to their viewers the seriousness of this storm. And as you walk around and you talk to people who are sheltered here in this hotel, you see grim faces, you see people who are worried about their possessions in their homes back in New Orleans and along the way. So again, it's going to be several hours before we know anything, and who knows when they will be able to return to see what their homes look like.
So most of the folks in those hotels, Jennifer, have either evacuated or are hunkering down. Are the hotels well protected?
The hotels are well protected, and again, what they were expecting here were tropical storm force winds, anywhere from 50 miles, 60 miles, 70 miles an hour, gusts of 70 miles an hour. We're not looking at, we don't believe we're looking at anything like hurricane force winds beyond, 74 miles, 100 mile per hour winds. Baton Rouge, I used to work here for 3 years, several years ago, and I have to say I have never seen this type of situation here in Baton Rouge, it just goes to show how powerful this storm is. But I do believe the people are safer here than they are in New Orleans. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Jennifer Donnellan, thank you very much for that live report from Baton Rouge, and stay safe. I want to continue our coverage of Hurricane Katrina, which is now bearing down again on the area, the Gulf part of the United States, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. Let's go to our Chief Meteorologist, Bryan Norcross, in Weather Control. Bryan?
All right, Elliot, we've been tracking this hour by hour, minute by minute, really, here on real-time Doppler 4. Now, there's the eye. It's very obvious right there. And here is the eye wall. It goes all the way down to the southeast corner of the eye, or part of the eye there, and wraps around like that and includes downtown New Orleans. This is downtown New Orleans over here. These are the suburbs of Slidell up on the north side of Lake Pontchartrain. That's the big lake right there. Now, the worst of this from a flooding standpoint looks like it's going to happen on the Mississippi coast here to the west of Biloxi. Biloxi is just up under where it says the 4 up there. Let me move that, and you can see that's where Biloxi, Mississippi is, right up here. But the worst of it, because here's the rotation around the storm, and it's pushing the water up on the Gulf Coast right there, and the storm surge there is estimated that it will be in the 20 to 25 foot range with waves on top of that. Now, when the storm was down here, rotating like this, it came in, pushed the water like this in toward New Orleans, and we understand there's been a break in the levee there and many houses underwater. Now, David Bernard has been watching this closely develop, and he's going to look at the satellite and also explain what's going on with the levee and where likely this major flooding is going on in New Orleans. Now, we haven't got any reports from Mississippi yet, but so let's concentrate on what we know about, and we also know about, obviously, the structural damage going on in downtown New Orleans that we've heard about. All right, David, I guess you start with the satellite picture.
Yeah, we're going to start with that, Bryan, and I may go back to real-time Doppler if you leave it in that position, just to emphasize something, but not just yet. And when we look at the satellite, this is the latest picture, and notice that the western side of the eye wall, these brighter colors, seems to have been enhanced or strengthened just slightly as it moved over downtown New Orleans, and so that may have enhanced the wind and rain potential there in the last hour or two, when we've been getting a lot of reports of the really damage reports coming in, and possibly some minor structural failure at the Superdome. Now, I want to show you a map, and I've been showing this throughout the morning. This is a map of New Orleans. The red lines are the hurricane protection levees, basically a fort around the city. There has been a breach in the hurricane protection levee on the Industrial Canal, and it's in an area of New Orleans known as the 9th Ward and down toward Araby. This is Araby right here, and this is the 9th Ward, and so this portion of the levee has failed because of a 20-foot storm surge that came into this narrow area of water, and it was just too much for the levee. It topped the levee, and in addition, apparently the levee may have failed in a couple of spots. So 3 to 8 feet of water is apparently inundating neighborhoods in this section of eastern New Orleans. Now, Lake Pontchartrain to the north, the Weather Service has just come out and said that the storm surge looks like it's going to be 12 feet over southern Lake Pontchartrain. The levees should hold. They will not top the levee with a 10 to 12-foot storm surge, but we can't guarantee there won't be a breach in the levee if the levee happens to be weak in a few spots. So that we still have to watch for. But as far as the levees being topped on the north side of New Orleans along Lake Pontchartrain, based on the Weather Service projection now of a 10 to 12-foot storm surge, it may be okay. Now, Bryan, if I could show real-time Doppler just one more time, and this map that you showed, again, here's where the levee breach was, right in this area. Also, severe storm surge flooding is going on this end of St. Tammany Parish below Slidell. And the Weather Service says there could be a 20-foot storm surge ongoing in here. There is a lot of expensive homes in this area, and when the eye of the storm lifts north later this afternoon, the west winds are going to come across Lake Pontchartrain and then force water into Slidell from this direction. The bottom line is there's a long way to go in this storm. In general, it looks like most of metropolitan New Orleans, as far as storm surge flooding goes, should get by. It is still early on. We're just starting to get the return off of the lake. But again, with the exception of this breach down in the 9th Ward in Araby and Bryan, ironically, these are the exact same two neighborhoods that were inundated in Betsy in 1965 when there wasn't a levee there to begin with.
David, is the whole levee system the same? As I recall, part of the levee is higher, and they actually have had some levee failures or weaknesses that they've found over the last few years.
Right, and a lot of the levees are built according to where in the city they are in relation to sea level. This is the lowest part of New Orleans, out here in the east and where that levee break was. So some of these levees are built to as high as 18 feet above sea level. Others, though, are averaging around anywhere 13, 14, 15 feet above sea level. But the other problem that's occurred that you just alluded to is the Corps of Engineers did a study recently within the past year, and they've gone around measuring these levees, and they've found that the subsidence has caused them to sink up to a foot in some locations, and that's what happens in South Louisiana. And you know, I mean, around here you have the same type of problems with subsidence. It's just a difficult task to fight nature and this erosion process, and it's taken a toll on the levees all these years.
Especially there, pumping all the oil out, pumping the water out, and everything else. And I think I saw that the surface of the earth has dropped about 3 feet in general in that part of Louisiana in the last century. 3-foot difference in altitude. So
and the marshland that was there below New Orleans back in the 50s and 60s, a lot of that is gone.
Right.
And it's and we've had, you know, saltwater intrusion taking over a lot of that brackish water, and so you don't have as much of a buffer between the Gulf and New Orleans, which sits there. Really, New Orleans is pretty much an island.
I bet they find this time after Isidore, a little tropical storm came in, caused tremendous flooding, that the threat is actually worse than people have thought. No matter whether the big levee is topped and downtown New Orleans gets inundated or not, I'll bet that the bottom line is here, this is actually a bigger problem than we thought.
And there have been people trying to advocate that, and you'll understand this other point, Brian, is as far as wind goes, the building code is weak in Louisiana, and we're seeing that today. We're having lots of structural failures, lots of windows that probably unnecessarily, if there was a stricter code, would be able to withstand these winds.
Right. Yeah, they for whatever reason didn't learn the lessons that we learned here. All right, David, thanks very much. So we'll continue to watch here. Radar pictures come in minute by minute, and we'll continue to keep you up to date. Okay, Elliot?
Brian, thank you. David, Bernard, also thank you very much. Stay with CBS 4 News. We have reporters throughout the Gulf Coast of the United States. Brian Andrews is in New Orleans. You saw Jennifer Donnellan in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We have reporters staked out throughout this region as a very powerful Hurricane Katrina now bears down on that section of the United States. These are live pictures right now from one of our affiliates in the region. We're also getting some reports of damage in Gulfport, Mississippi, where we're told there's major flooding, that many of the roofs have lost their, buildings have lost their roofs, and so just a very, very serious situation there. These live pictures right now are from Pensacola, which is also feeling the brunt of this storm. We heard Governor Jeb Bush talking about the shelters in that area, that shelters have been set up, and that he is encouraging everybody in the state of Florida to take the storm extremely seriously, and also that Florida is helping out people from other neighboring states who have looked for refuge in our shelters in northern Florida. Right now we're going to go back to CNN live coverage of Hurricane Katrina. We'll bring you updates from here at CBS 4 throughout the day. Stay with us.
I want to show you live pictures that we're getting in from New Orleans. This is a causeway. We have to basically describe to you what you're looking at because the conditions, because of the intense rain and wind, are practically at whiteout conditions. These pictures coming to us courtesy of our affiliate WDSU in New Orleans. Big part of the story that's been developing in New Orleans, thousands of people that weren't able for one reason or another to get out of the city took refuge in the Superdome, believing that that was the safest place to be. We've heard reports over the last hour that a significant size hole has developed in the roof of the Superdome. With more on that, our Jean Meserve is right outside the structure to tell us the latest. Jean? Jean Meserve, are you with us? All right, we will work. Clearly, we're going to have some challenges as we go throughout the day in southern Louisiana and Mississippi as well. We will get back to Jean Meserve as soon as possible. Chad, let's talk about what's happening with the latest with the storm.
Well, the latest on the storm is that the worst part for New Orleans, the backside of the eye wall that actually went right over New Orleans, is now gone. It has now moved away, so the winds are dying off now. But the winds are still coming in from the north at about 70 miles per hour. Biloxi just had a 90-mile-per-hour wind gust, and our friends here that have been working with us all day long, basically from the Viper system, now just found a wind gust to 98 miles per hour at Biloxi itself. The entire system spinning around, making landfall itself, the eye wall making landfall again, now across parts of southern Mississippi. The heaviest stuff that was in New Orleans now gone. You may notice that a lot of the radar that was over New Orleans doesn't exist anymore. It's a lot lighter. Well, you know why? Because the radar site at Slidell is now completely out of service. So we had to slide our radar site over and use the Mobile site, which is much farther away, that can't quite see the rain now in New Orleans. We expected this. The winds at Slidell gusting over 116 miles per hour. There's going to be structural failure all along this area, and obviously the Weather Service is not insulated from that. There you go, Biloxi. The wind about to really pick up again. Long Branch picking up your highest wind gust so far. Bay St. Louis wind gust there, although not official, over 120 miles per hour in the past half hour. Back to you, Aaron.
All right, Chad, we'll be checking back with you. Right now, of course, the Red Cross is going to be very busy in helping folks after this storm. Marty Evans with the Red Cross joins us right now from Washington, D.C. Marty, what kind of preparations are in place ready to help once the storm passes?
Well, Darren, we've had extensive sheltering operations for the last several days in 7 states. So once the storm passes through each of the areas and it's safe to be out on the roads, we've staged extensive replenishment supplies, food service, cleanup kits, all of that kind of thing that's going to be necessary to get people back into their homes to move right in. And so we'll be distributing that. We've also put the word out that we need financial support. This operation is huge. We've mounted the largest disaster operation in Red Cross history, and so we're asking the American public to help by making a financial contribution.
And you know there will be people who want to help. A lot of people with ties to the south, especially along the coast there. Marty, I'm going to cut you short only because we have our Jean Meserve standing outside the Superdome in New Orleans with a breaking part of the story, literally breaking away from the structure. Jean. Jean, can you hear us? Well, we can see Jean.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Jean.
Hi. The winds are just incredible here in New Orleans. We've been down to the other end of this parking garage, and we can see the roof of the Superdome. The membrane over the top of the Superdome has been shredded. It is hanging off the building in pieces. We still see no sign from this vantage point that anyone is being moved out of the building, but we can see that white outer membrane.
Okay, we're going to work on getting a better attachment there with Jean Meserve. We're going to get her back in a second. Clearly, there's some safety issues they need to address there. Marty Evans with the Red Cross, if you're still with us, a question for you. The situation of so much concern about what's happening in the Superdome, this is where the place where thousands of people took refuge because they didn't have anywhere else to go, couldn't get out of the city of New Orleans. As someone who is in the refuge business, what would be your biggest concern about what's taking place inside there?
Well, I think the biggest concern right now is the safety of the people inside, and we understand we're not operating that shelter, but we understand that people on the scene are watching very closely so that they can move people around that complex as best they can. I think this points out, since the storm will continue to progress through the U.S., the importance of listening to the authorities and evacuating if the order is given as the storm moves northward. It is absolutely no place to be if you can avoid it, and that's why Red Cross opens shelters as necessary in safer areas for people who evacuate.
Marty, the Red Cross has a huge job ahead of it, not only today, but in the days ahead. We wish you well with your work.
Thank you, Darren.
Thank you for making time for us with a very busy time. Let's go back to downtown New Orleans. That's where our John Zarella has been standing by. Last we checked in, John, you said the water was rising.
It was rising. It does appear now to have leveled off, and you know, it's hard to say which way the wind is blowing in the down here as it swirls around on the street level, but you can tell by the water it's kind of changed directions now.
Now live from CBS 4 Weather Control, this is a Hurricane Katrina update.
Good morning. I'm Elliot Rodriguez. We continue following Hurricane Katrina. These are live pictures right now as the hurricane is releasing its full fury on the Gulf Coast of the United States. People who did not get out of New Orleans in time are experiencing the devastating power of the storm firsthand. In fact, the latest reports out of New Orleans, you're looking at pictures of the Superdome, is that the roof of the Superdome is now in pieces, that part of the roof has been shredded, and there are, at last count, 9,000 people who have been moved inside, who have been evacuated and had nowhere to go in the New Orleans area. Those folks are waiting out this storm in the Superdome in New Orleans, and right now the latest reports are that the winds are so powerful that parts of the roof of this football stadium have been shredded away, so there is grave concern for the folks inside the Superdome in New Orleans. And in just a moment, we're going to talk to someone who is very aware of the situation in New Orleans. Our David Bernard, who worked in New Orleans as a meteorologist for years, is now joining us, and he's going to talk to us in a moment. As of 5 o'clock this morning, here in South Florida, to shift gears a little bit and to focus on the recovery effort that's going on here, these are the latest figures released by Governor Jeb Bush just a short while ago. There are 212,900 people in Miami-Dade County without power. In Broward County, the number is 101,000. Those who have had power restored, almost 1.4 million. So as you can see, FP&L crews have been out there and they have restored power to many folks. However, many of us still have to wait because there is still a lot of work to be done in Miami-Dade and Broward counties to get power restored to folks. All right, our CBS 4 storm specialist David Bernard is joining us right now. And David, you and I were just talking about why the Superdome in New Orleans is used as a refuge. Could you explain that to our viewers?
The reason we have the Superdome as a refuge of last resort, a last resort shelter, is because the Red Cross, who traditionally sets up shelters, will not operate shelters south of Interstate 12 and Interstate 10 in South Louisiana because they're considered not safe and susceptible to tidal flooding. However, in New Orleans, much like in Miami, you have a population there who have no other means to evacuate the city. They don't own personal vehicles. They can't afford plane tickets out of town, so they have to have some kind of shelter of last resort. This is one of the more obvious places, a large facility that can take elderly people, people that have ongoing medical conditions that aren't hospitalized but otherwise live at home, and that's why they choose this. There's been studies, and supposedly the Superdome is able to withstand winds to 200 miles per hour. Of course, we're not sure how much of the roof is gone. It may not be an incredibly large section. I mean, it's still alarming, but nonetheless, it sounds like the structural integrity of the Superdome is most likely in place, but that's scary that you have all these people stuck in this building and, and you have 135 mile per hour winds outside. This is the latest coordinates just into weather control, and the storm 30 miles east-southeast of New Orleans and moving to the north at 15 miles per hour. the damage is going to be unbelievable in New Orleans and all along the Mississippi and Alabama Gulf Coast. And last year during Ivan, I saw that damage in the Florida Panhandle. This storm is even stronger than Ivan, and it was amazing, as most of you probably saw the pictures. Here's the satellite picture and the latest image. This is what's interesting. These purples in here on the western eye wall. Here's downtown New Orleans. Here is the eye of the hurricane. The worst thing that could have happened is if the eye ended up right there. So if it had shifted just 30 miles to the west, it would have been even worse for New Orleans. It's going to be bad enough as it is. But where the center is, and just to the east of there, there is going to be a 20 to 25-foot storm surge right now coming into the Mississippi Gulf Coast and also into parts of southeast Louisiana and St. Tammany Parish. In parts of New Orleans, there has been a breach of the levee in eastern New Orleans and right in this vicinity because of these winds piling in from the east. However, most of the rest of the hurricane protection levee in New Orleans, according to the Weather Service, will probably hold up. So as far as the scenario of water inundating the entire city, that looks like it may not happen. However, in small areas of New Orleans here, reports are, because of the levee break, that water is reaching levels at least 8 feet high, and even coming up to rooftops in some areas. Now, as far as flooding from rains, there are reports that the pump system there, the mechanism that pumps all the water out of New Orleans, because it's shaped like a bowl when it rains and drains it, apparently the pumps have failed due to power and also due to flooding. So massive amounts of street flooding is probably ongoing in that area as we speak. We can look at real-time Doppler right now and kind of get a closer in look. Again, this is the center. This is the northern eye wall. The northern eye wall is now in Slidell, Louisiana. This is a suburb of New Orleans. Very expensive homes in this area here. Tremendous storm surge coming into this region. Bay St. Louis, casinos from Bay St. Louis to Gulfport and then Biloxi further up. This is where, right here, this little bay, that is where Hurricane Camille in 1969 made landfall, was right there. This is a very close track. Katrina coming in a little bit further west than Camille did, but unbelievable. Where you see these reds and purples right here, winds are gusting as high as 135 miles per hour right now. Now it looks like the western eye wall is getting ready to lift away from New Orleans, so the very worst of the hurricane probably will be ending in New Orleans in the next hour or so, but they're going to have hurricane force gust probably for several more hours because the wind field on this storm is so incredibly large. And now for some more analysis, let's go to Chief Meteorologist Bryan Norcross.
All right, David, no, I wanted to ask you here, because I know you've been searching to try and find out what exactly is going on, and a lot of the sensors and tide gauges and whatnot don't seem to be working. Is this a situation, do you think, where we're just not going to know until the storm subsides, and then, you know, you have to go and look and see what got wiped out, where the water was 20 feet high and so forth, or are we going to have some other way of knowing? Is there something else going on with the levees, for example, that would let us know?
As often happens in these hurricanes, Brian, as you know, as I've been watching places I go to find data, each hour I'm finding less and less. So as the weather has really turned for the worse, we're just not getting much observation now out of southeast Louisiana. And so it's getting harder and harder to really know what is going on. But of course, that was a confirmed eyewitness report, obviously, of this levee break in this section of New Orleans right down in here. And the Weather Service it has indicated that the surge here is going to be 10 to 12 feet. I think that's based mostly on the computer model forecast of what to expect. So whether or not it actually gets higher than that, you know, we'll have to wait and see. But the levees along here should be able to, I know they're high enough to withstand a 10 to 12 foot storm surge, but there could be a breach in the levee, you know, which I think happened in New Orleans East. There could be spots in the levee. They inspect these levees all the time, several times a year. But obviously, you know, with the force of that water, there could be a break in some point. This is the time in the hurricane, Brian, I think you know this, where you start hearing things and some end up being true and some not, and it gets hard really to sort out all the information.
Because it's hard to see exactly what's happened. It's the same thing. You get really strong winds and people swear it was a tornado that came through, but it was just really the hurricane. As a matter of fact, it was, you pointed out earlier, that the Weather Service office there put out a tornado warning for this hurricane. I had never seen that before,
yes.
Just because people when the winds start really blowing, people think there's a tornado, so they said, let's just warn them for that so they know what to expect. These are mostly just earthen levees, right? It's
yes,
just dirt
the hurricane protection levee system, they're earthen levees. The only concrete levee walls are along parts of the Mississippi River, where some of those exist, but even most of the Mississippi River levees, in addition to the levees around Lake Pontchartrain and protecting the city from the Gulf. Here's a map of that levee system. In fact, the red lines here is the hurricane protection levee. This is where the levee breach was in here. And so see how this is a funnel right in here? And you have these powerful east winds coming in from the Gulf, and it caused a 20-foot storm surge in here, and that's too high for these levees. So that's why we saw the breach in this area. And the next area of concern would be along the north end of Lake Pontchartrain, but everything we've heard so far is that these levees here are holding up, at least for the time being. But flooding from rain, I think, Bryan, is increasingly becoming a problem, because apparently the pumps, the extensive pumping system that they have in New Orleans, which is quite famous and was one of the first developed in the world to help actually evacuate rainwater from the city because of its low elevation, those apparently have stopped working. And so I imagine that the rainfall flooding is becoming quite a serious situation. I think the Doppler radar estimates have been anywhere from 5 to 10 inches of rain, or possibly even more with this storm. It looks like the rain hopefully is going to end. It looks like just south of the city there that the worst of the rain may be pulling away, so that would be some good news.
All right, David, just as you were speaking there, the new advisory in from the National Hurricane Center. The winds now down to 125 miles an hour. So now Katrina is a Category 3 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson scale. Still, the winds affecting the high rises will be higher than that, and we've already had significant failures, and many buildings obviously are weakened. So the thinking is that failures would continue with 125-mile-an-hour winds. The storm is moving north now at 16 miles an hour, so it continues to slowly increase that forward speed, which is actually a good thing, because it's there and it's gone faster, and in a place that is subject to flooding anyway, the faster the storm, the faster the rain moves out. The pressure is up to 927 millibars. They're still expecting 15 to 20-foot storm surges along that Mississippi coast there. You're going back to real-time Doppler 4 here. So they're still expecting in this area here on the right side where that water will come in, 15 to 20-foot surge. Now, back when the storm was down here and the circulation was like this, that put the 20-foot surge in that way. But now that it's moved to the north, now the real threat is going to be up here on the Mississippi coast and maybe on the extreme eastern Louisiana coast there, but it's going to extend a good ways out, and they're still estimating that hurricane force winds will go 150 miles inland, all the way north through Mississippi. They're expecting hurricane force winds, and that is the crux of the 11 o'clock advisory. I'm just scanning it here to see if there's anything else significant. Nope, that's the bottom line. So the hurricane is continuing to weaken some, but it's still a formidable Category 3 hurricane. And for everyone here in South Florida, we can relate. Just the other day, we had this Category 1 go through here, and that was scary as can be. So we can imagine what's happening there. And they're having the water on top of the wind. All we had was wind here the other day, but they're having this water. And remember, if you have a storm surge that's 15 to 20 feet, you're going to have waves at 10 to 15 feet on top of that. So say 30 feet of water coming out of the Gulf there along the coast. So obviously that's going to be nothing but bad news. All right, we'll get the new advisory together. We'll have it for you around 11 o'clock.
Yeah, Bryan and David, before you guys go, help me do some math here, because if you have these levees around New Orleans that can protect the city from 10 to 12 feet only, and here you have a storm surge, which, Bryan, you said could be as high as 25 feet, that's 15 feet of water, and then on top of that, the water from the rain that's falling, because we're talking mostly about the storm surge here, but also the rain. What projections do they have in New Orleans for the type of damage that would be caused by something like this?
Well, first of all, we have to be a little careful here, because the levee around New Orleans, and I'll let David pick this up because he's actually got the good map there, but that is not where this 25-foot storm surge now is going to happen. It's going to happen up here on the, let me get this here where you can see it, on the Mississippi coast, because see already the circulation, here's the circulation here. So the water is all being pushed up on this side here. So here's Mississippi over here. This is all Mississippi. So that's what's threatened. The levee is over here around New Orleans, like this. So that's not getting that pressure. Now it did earlier in here when the storm was further south and it pushed the water in, but that would seem to be relieved now. David, why don't you pick it up because you have the levee map there.
Sure.
And we can show the
this
difference.
is right here, this kind of funneling area right here. That's where you had continually east winds pouring in when the hurricane was down to the south, and that's where the levee breach was. But with the hurricane passing to the east of New Orleans, if the hurricane, I mean literally, this right here is where the eye is right now, just off the edge of your screen. If it had come in on this side of the city, which is about, it's about 30 miles from here over to there, if that had happened, then we would have had an extensive period of east to southeast winds piling water in from the Gulf, pouring into the lake, and then the Lake Pontchartrain surge would have been much higher, and you would have had the threat, much higher threat of these levees being compromised up here. And this is the largest body of water directly, in front of the city, which makes it one of the largest concerns. And also, it would have increased the storm surge flooding on this side of the Mississippi River, because just below where the hurricane protection levee ends here, there's some communities below there, but effectively, it's the Gulf of Mexico. It's almost all water below New Orleans, so it's really just an island now. But Brian, yeah, that's the good point that you made. It's so, I can't stress it enough how much of a difference it makes that the storm came in 30 miles further east than instead of over there. It would have just been even more dramatic. I know the damage is going to be just terrible from the winds and the rain to begin with, but it would have made just an enormous difference in the storm surge for New Orleans.
Okay, Brian and David, thank you very much. Those 30 miles, good news for the folks in New Orleans, but still they are being pounded. CBS 4's Jennifer Donnellan is in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where she's has this report. She's in Baton Rouge.
We are 70 miles west of New Orleans. We are on the outer edges of this massive storm, and you can see what we're dealing with here. Strong gusts of wind and steady rain. Hurricane Katrina made landfall earlier this morning, and we will not be out of danger for the next several hours. The massive hurricane came ashore early this morning, south of New Orleans, after hammering the Gulf Coast overnight. Katrina's fierce winds, monster waves, and driving rain sent tens of thousands of residents from Louisiana to the Florida Panhandle fleeing. New Orleans looked like a ghost town as it braced for the worst, though it looks like the center of the storm will actually pass to the east of the city. The mayor ordered all 485,000 residents to get out. Those without the means to leave headed for last resort shelters. Well past nightfall, many were still waiting for a seat in the Superdome.
We've got a very safe and secure environment for them. It's just not going to be comfortable.
Stranded Big Easy visitors found shelter on the higher floors of their hotels.
To start out as a vacation and a college trip, and who knows how it's going to end.
Even though the eye of the storm is 70 to 100 miles away from where we are here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, you can see what we're dealing with here. This is a massive storm. The hurricane force winds extend out 100 miles. But New Orleans looks the most vulnerable. The city sits below sea level and is surrounded by a large lake and the Mississippi River. Katrina's storm surge could easily top the levees built to keep the water out.
We're looking at from 15 to 20 feet of water in the city during that time.
Katrina took 9 lives when it struck Florida's southeastern coast as a much weaker storm. Hunkered down Gulf Coast residents have little to do now but wait and see how bad this hit will be. If this storm continues to pass to the east of New Orleans, when all is said and done, we may discover that the Big Easy has averted a major disaster. But turning towards Biloxi, Mississippi, they are getting hammered right now. We have a crew there who've had to retreat for their own safety. They were unable to transmit television, so the folks in Mississippi are under the gun. I'm Jennifer Donnellan. Now back to you.
Jennifer Donnellan riding out the storm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Now let's go back to weather control, where Bryan Norcross has the latest advisory on Hurricane Katrina. Brian?
All right, I gave you the highlights just a moment ago. Let's go ahead and give you the numbers. Here's where it stands right now. The wind's down to 125 miles per hour, moving north now at 16, as I said. Notice the pressure up to 927. That's compared to the 902 that it was, but still, Hurricane Andrew was 922. So this is still a very, very strong hurricane, 35 miles east-northeast of New Orleans, so it has essentially passed by New Orleans. Now, let's look at the new future track here. Notice it takes it up right through Mississippi and then speeds on up for the rest of the week. But all the way up to about the Tennessee border, that's going to be a hurricane. They're going to have hurricane conditions, you know, and once you get inland with hurricane force winds, all kind of bad things happen because you don't have trees or structures or anything else designed for hurricanes. And it's still going to be quite windy and wet with potential flooding here all the way up into the Ohio Valley. And then the storm will just spread rain and not very nice weather all the way up into southern Canada and western New York State, it looks like, later on in the week as the bad weather spreads to the north. Now, here's a new radar image, and here we can see what's happened to the eye. The eye has gotten quite large here, and look, there's where the water is coming in now, right there, and that's it's probably the worst storm surge happening right now in Pass Christian, which is right here, over to Gulfport, and Biloxi is just a little bit further on there to the east on your screen. Right there. But the weather looks like it's improved in New Orleans. You see down there in the corner of the screen. We don't, unfortunately, have any good pictures out of New Orleans to see exactly what's going on. But the bad weather, the worst of the weather, is right in here between Bay St. Louis, Pass Christian, and Gulfport, which is actually where the worst of Hurricane Camille went in 1969. But Biloxi is certainly getting part of it, and this is where that worst storm surge of 20 to 25 feet with waves on top of that is going to come in. There you see another update. Notice the weather is clearing in New Orleans. Not that the wind isn't blowing, but the rain seems to be ending just because the hurricane is indeed weakening as it moves ashore, and it's not that whole concentric donut like it was before. You can kind of see on our image back here how this dark area is wrapping around and coming into Mississippi. It's going to be very, very, very bad in Mississippi. I think it seems clear to us that the worst of this is going to be in Mississippi. Not that they don't have very big problems in New Orleans, and we don't even know what all the problems are in New Orleans yet, so we'll have to stand by to find out what's happened there.
Brian, is it safe to say that, that New Orleans has seen the worst of the storm already?
Yes, yes. The weather should get better in New Orleans. As a matter of fact, I think the rain has stopped in New Orleans, although it may start again. Although, let me just look here. No, they may not get any more rain in New Orleans. Now that I see that if we can go to the radar just for 1 second, and we go back to those pictures from Biloxi, you see here's New Orleans. Look at this. This is all rain-free here. What's happened is dry air has wrapped around the storm, and that's one of the factors that weakened it. But clearly, the worst of this storm now is there on the Mississippi coast, and no doubt they are absolutely getting hammered there right now.
Okay, Bryan Norcross, thank you very much. And Brian mentioned one of the regions that's experiencing the worst part of the storm is Biloxi, Mississippi. You can see these live pictures right now as those powerful winds have torn off a good portion of the roof of that structure right there. You can see it's no match. And one of the things we've heard from Bryan Norcross over and over again is that the building codes in many of these communities are nowhere near as strong as the building codes here in South Florida. Of course, we learned the lesson the hard way after Hurricane Andrew. The local officials, the state officials, came out with much stronger requirements for buildings. One of them was that roofs had to be built a lot stronger than they were prior to Hurricane Andrew. But these are live pictures, again, from Biloxi, Mississippi. Stay with CBS 4 News for the very latest on the storm. We're going to get live pictures not only from Biloxi, we also have CBS 4's Brian Andrews, who's live in New Orleans, where there's concern about the thousands of people. At the last count, 9,000 people at the Superdome there in New Orleans, where there are reports that part of the roof has blown away as a result of the storm. Witnesses saying that they have seen the shell of the roof and that a section of the roof there has been shredded. David Bernard explaining to us that there has been concern for years in New Orleans that the Red Cross would not establish an evacuation center in a low-lying area. Well, that's a good portion of the city of New Orleans. Therefore, the local officials there chose the Superdome, that 70,000 plus seat football stadium that's right there in downtown New Orleans. That is where 9,000 folks who had no other alternative where to ride out this storm chose to go. You can see some of the pictures that's come from the region. We're getting more and more of these pictures trickling in, and of course, as we get these pictures, we will bring them to you right here. We also heard from CBS 4's Jennifer Donnellan, who was in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where also the storm has affected. We can see the causeways there have been closed. We're hearing that the United States military is opening up 5 bases that may be used for hurricane relief. 370,000 in southeast Louisiana are without power right now. So those folks without power, right now the storm is bearing down on them. There's grave concern about the flooding. We've heard from David Bernard and Bryan Norcross about the situation with the levees there in around New Orleans that could only protect them from a certain amount of the flooding. Here, this is flooding. These pictures just coming in, folks, as we are reporting on the storm. This is now from Biloxi, Mississippi, I'm told, where you have many of the casinos. A lot of people go to visit the casinos there. Well, here's the situation with those casinos. They are now lakefront casinos for all intents and purposes, but at least they do have power. Possibly they have emergency generators in some of these buildings there, because as you can see, the lights are on, but very severe flooding in parts of Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama right now as a result of the storm. Also concern in parts of the Florida Panhandle. Folks, stay with us. We have a team of reporters fanned out throughout the region. We also have the top weather team in South Florida monitoring the storm for you, and we'll have the latest on our recovery efforts here in South Florida. But right now we're going to go to CNN's continuing coverage of Hurricane Katrina.
Considered one of the safest places in all of New Orleans to be. Well, we've received reports over the last couple hours that there actually is a large-size hole that has developed in the roof of the Superdome. Our Jean Meserve is standing right outside the huge structure and brings us the latest. Jean.
Darren, I cannot see any holes from our vantage point, but I can tell you this. There is that white dome for which this is so famous, and it is shredded. That white membrane that covers the Super Bowl is hanging off or has blown away completely, exposing the structure that you can see underneath. When you look down from the Superdome, you see flooding in the streets. It's probably a foot or so deep in that vicinity right now. We did see some people who had actually come out into the storm. They're on the protected side of the Superdome. Look to us as though they perhaps just having a look-see at what was happening outside. We saw no signs that anybody was being moved from the building, at least on our side. It could be that they're taking them out through some other route. I just don't know the geography of the building well enough to tell you. Quite a startling and amazing morning here in New Orleans. I am standing near skyscrapers, and windows have blown out all over the place. There is a Hyatt Hotel up next to me, and a corner of that building catches the wind as it comes by. All those corner rooms, the windows have been blown out completely, and from the other end of the garage we could see the side of the building that's facing the wind, and over there it looks like just drapes blowing in the wind. That's all that you see now, all those windows gone. The flooding situation, as I mentioned, looks to be a little worse here. Nothing that I would categorize at this point as catastrophic. Just as I'm talking to you now, the winds have just picked up appreciably. They have been absolutely punishing at some point. When we went over first to try and get a look at that Superdome, we couldn't even put our heads around the corner until there was a lull. It's just amazing power. Never have I seen anything like this. One of the crew guys who's working with me has been in 19 hurricanes. He said this one is without parallel. Darren?
All right, Gene Meserve, once again, we encourage you and the crew to make some safe decisions. Thank you for bringing us that report. As we're talking about the Superdome, we have not received any reports that anybody's been encouraged to leave the Superdome, that the outer part of that structure, even if the roof goes, is still the safest place for those folks to be for now. A lot of work is going to need to take place once the storm passes. That's when FEMA gets involved. Our Tom Foreman is standing by live at the FEMA headquarters in Washington, D.C. Tom.
Darren, people here are watching every report there. Let me talk about the Superdome for a moment before we get away from that. I was on top of the Superdome years ago because the Superdome roof is actually fairly thin, and Gene was correct to call it a membrane. The white part of the Superdome is very, very thin. It's hard. It was cracked years ago by a hailstorm and had to be repaired at the time. Remember, this is the largest unpillared room in the world, so it's a gigantic expanse, and the roof is quite thin and light for that purpose. However, I am familiar with the layout of the Superdome, and in the walls of the Superdome, all the things you would visit at any stadium, all the concessions, the restrooms, the locker rooms, all of that are enclosed in the walls. There's easily room there for thousands of people, maybe tens of thousands of people, in a very safe location. So even if part of the roof is leaking, which is not a big surprise, that's very different from a collapse. We'll have to see what we see as that develops. Nonetheless, people here at FEMA, what they're trying to do is look at that report and everything out of the Gulf to see where help is going to be needed. Look at a map of the Gulf area. One thing important to remember, New Orleans compared to the Gulf Coast are entirely different. New Orleans is effectively an island. It's surrounded by water in all directions. Whatever help is needed there, as FEMA knows, is going to have to come in over bridges and over roads or be flown in. Boats will help some, but only to a limited degree. That's why New Orleans will have a certain special treatment in how they handle it. There are levees around there. One of your earlier people said the levees are holding. That is very, very big news, because that may keep the roads passable. It allows the big pumps to work to pump the water out. An amazing system there. When you move up the Gulf Coast.
Now live from CBS 4 Weather Control, this is a Hurricane Katrina update.
Good morning, I'm Elliot Rodriguez. We continue following Hurricane Katrina, which is now bearing down on the Gulf Coast of the United States, and you can see the impact it's having on folks there as these people experiencing those winds firsthand. They're experiencing the devastating power of Hurricane Katrina, and part of the Superdome's roof in New Orleans blown off, as you heard there from CNN, as thousands sit inside seeking shelter from this Category 4 hurricane. As of 5 o'clock this morning here in South Florida, here's the situation we're dealing with right now for many people. 212,900 folks, customers that is, in Miami-Dade County without electricity, 101,000 customers in Broward County without electricity. Power, however, has been restored to 1.4 million customers as those FP&L crews are out there doing the best they can to get everybody back online. Right now, let's go to Weather Control. Bryan Norcross has the very latest satellite pictures of Hurricane Katrina. Bryan?
All right, Elliot, the hurricane is making landfall again, now on the Mississippi coast, right at the Mississippi-Louisiana line. Here's the satellite picture, and there's a lot of information in this. First of all, we clearly see the hurricane weakening as it's moving to the north. What's happened is the dry air over here has wrapped around in there, and that's actually allowed the bad weather to clear out of the New Orleans area, although it's still quite windy there. But we see this piece of the eye wall here, that purple area, you see that? That's rotating around now into the Mississippi coast, as there the hurricane is just now making landfall there right on the Mississippi-Louisiana line, but it's driving the water like this into Mississippi, Alabama, all the way over here into Florida. You can see this is an extremely strong band here, but this is the just spectacularly strong winds with the damaging, more than damaging, probably destructive storm surge expected here with the winds. But at least the weather is improving in New Orleans, and things now will slowly get better there as the storm has moved just to the east of the downtown area. Now, David Bernard is tracking that. He's got the latest numbers, and he'll explain exactly why that is such an important thing that it stayed just to the east of New Orleans.
Bryan, here are the latest numbers into weather control. 30.2 north, 89.6 west. That puts the eye of the storm 35 miles east-northeast of New Orleans, or right at the mouth of the Pearl River, which divides Mississippi from Louisiana and continuing to move north, now a little bit faster at 16 miles per hour. Good news, because it's getting the storm out of there that much quicker. As we go into the future, we can see that this is going to end up in the northeastern United States and up into Canada by the end of the week. There is going to be probably some very strong winds, some wind damage all the way up into Alabama, maybe even Tennessee and Kentucky, and some heavy rainfall down the road will likely be a risk from this as well. Again, here's another perspective on the storm as Bryan was showing you a moment ago. And again, the west side of this kind of eroding, but on the Gulf Coast right now, Mississippi and over toward Mobile, tremendous, powerful rain, storm surge and rain now coming into that area. So really bad news there. And again, here's a radar perspective of the storm yesterday and approaching the coast this morning, and again continuing to move up to the north and causing lots of heavy showers and thunderstorms. So a real dangerous situation right now on the Gulf Coast, getting slightly better in New Orleans, at least with the rain, but the wind's going to stay up for the rest of the day. Elliot.
David, thank you. We've been focusing a lot on New Orleans, but let's go a few miles to the west. CBS 4's Jennifer Donnellan is live right now in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. She's also feeling the impact of the storm. She's joining us live right now. Jennifer?
Hi, and we are truly feeling the effects of the storm, and this should really go to show how powerful a storm this is and how large a storm this is. We are in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. That is the Mississippi River behind me. You can see we still have some folks out here on the levee walking around. We have many of the evacuees who left New Orleans over the weekend here in Baton Rouge. They came west to Baton Rouge as a safe haven here, but authorities are warning everyone here in Baton Rouge to please stay inside, because this storm is so powerful and it is so massive. We've been dealing with these steady, sustained winds. I clocked them at one point at about 20 miles per hour, but they feel as if they've strengthened since then. You can imagine if you have trees and you have debris on different houses that, and we've got ceiling fans here. I don't know if you can get a shot of the ceiling fan behind me. We've got ceiling fans here that are breaking apart. We are covered, fortunately. Here we go, this is part of the ceiling fan right here. Again, you have these type of winds beating against structures and beating against trees, as you all know, in Florida. We're gonna have some damage here. So authorities are hoping that people can keep the roads open here. Now, we have a crew in Biloxi, Mississippi. The good news for the Big Easy is this storm passed to the east, but Biloxi, Mississippi is getting hammered right now. Our crew was unable to transmit television from there. For their own safety, they had to break down their operation and get to a safe place in their hotel. We don't know when we will see them again, hopefully later this evening, but for right now, we're covering the story from Baton Rouge. We were in New Orleans yesterday and decided that in order to effectively cover this story, we needed to get out of New Orleans because of that fishbowl scenario there. And that is the situation where New Orleans is below sea level. We had those storm surge and those floodwaters. The city was expected to fill up. What we are hoping now with the path of this storm, is that when all is said and done, that we'll be able to go back to New Orleans and say that they avoided a major disaster. But again, many of the New Orleans residents are inside the hotel right now watching us through the glass windows, very concerned about their homes. We're hearing reports out of New Orleans that the Superdome, where we have some 9,000 residents out the storm, that's the football stadium there for New Orleans Saints, that parts of the roof are beginning to come off, but we are being told that the structure is safe. We've heard a report that the windows in the Hyatt Hotel, which is a large hotel there in downtown New Orleans, that the windows have blown out there. So it's hard at times to get information coming out from the most affected areas, because the crews there are having to hunker down. Communication is next to impossible, but just look at where we are right now. We are on the outer edge of this storm, and this is what we're dealing with. This just goes to show how powerful Katrina is.
Jennifer, you were in Florida just a few days ago, were you not, to cover the storm?
Yes, I was.
Compare the experience here to what you're seeing there in Louisiana.
Hard to compare, but very difficult to compare. I will say this though, and I think that it was a good lesson learned by all those who watched it. To call a Category 1 a minimal hurricane, I think we have to stop doing that because of what happened in Florida. I think people saw what happened when the storm came ashore in Florida. They started to pay closer attention to it here on the Gulf Coast and say, you know what, this may be a Category 1 right now, but this is a serious storm. Then when it emerged over the Gulf Coast and turned into a Category 5, we have more of these fans coming down right now. When it turned into a Category 5, I got to tell you, I was scared, and I've covered about 9 hurricanes, and when we were in New Orleans, we said, you know what, we've got to get out of here, or this is going to be a rescue operation for us.
Jennifer, you need to check that wind meter because we just lost Jennifer Donnellan. We got her back. Jennifer, I was going to say, check that wind meter because you've got much, much stronger winds there than 20 miles an hour.
Yeah. You know what, I have one with me, and I got to tell you, I'm starting to wonder if it's broken. Let's see. Because we used this last year for 3 or 4 hurricanes, Gene, Francis, Charlie, and Gene, Francis, and Charlie. Those are the 3 that I covered. And right now, it's for instance, it's giving me 13 miles per hour. And again, these winds feel much stronger. Now, you know, with a hurricane, it's kind of, you got to put these things right into the wind, but the winds are sort of whipping around, and that might be why I'm not getting as accurate a measurement as I could be. Again, 16.9 maximum on that. And it feels stronger than that because it's whipping me around a little bit here too. And you can see we already have some debris out here.
Oh, considerably stronger than that. Jennifer Donnellan, thank you very much for joining us live from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We'll look forward to more of your reports, and please be careful out there. Want to go back now to CNN continuing coverage of Hurricane Katrina. Of course, we'll be back periodically to bring you the very latest information from Weather Control and also what's happening here in South Florida as we recover from the storm. Don't go away.
Here on top of us yet, but already you can see blown out windows in the building across the street from us. The wind is howling and circulating throughout the corridors of these streets, just howling through here. The water is already coming up on the streets, up through the drainage system, all along the street here, off the sides of the buildings. See the water pouring down. Back in the distance, you can still barely see down the street. It's just a white sheet of water, a white sheet of rain pounding in downtown in the French Quarter. You can hear debris flying through the air. You can see debris up in the sky circling in the wind, just being whipped around by the wind. Pieces of shingle, pieces of roof tiles flying by. We do expect that we are going to see a lot more water rising. What we're seeing here is just water coming up from the drainage system, just from the rain. It's not flood waters from, say, Lake Pontchartrain. This is just strictly the overflow. All of the rain we have had for the last several hours as Hurricane Katrina continues to beat its path at our door. John Zarella, CNN, in the French Quarter.
Thank you for that report, John. We'd like to not just bring in the information, but give you a peek behind the scenes, how we are able to gather the information and the pictures and bring it to you. You might have heard that we made the decision to get our satellite trucks out of downtown New Orleans, which we did. John Zarella able to file that report, not just on the phone, but bring us the pictures and the video using a technology called FTP, which basically means he and his crew went and shot the video, able to send it to us via computer. We'll continue to bring you the latest pictures, the latest images, the latest information with our Chad Myers on Hurricane Katrina as it makes its way from the Gulf up into the continental U.S. Our coverage continues at your hurricane headquarters here on CNN.
Keep watching CNN, your hurricane headquarters.
Honey, does this make me look fat?
You betcha. In the time it takes to pull out the sleeper sofa, you could save hundreds on car insurance. Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
We're going to make accounts payable exciting again. That's what we need to do, people.
In the time it takes to clean out your desk, you could save hundreds on car insurance. Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Privacy, equality, the right to choose.
fundamental freedoms Americans have cherished for generations. But John Roberts dismisses one of our established liberties as the so-called right to privacy, and co-wrote a brief arguing that Roe v. Wade should be overruled. Roberts' legal record raises questions on whether he accepts the right to privacy. There's just too much at stake to let John Roberts become a decisive vote on the Supreme Court.
At Aim Low, we know renting a car can be stressful, so we've come up with a solution. A free stress ball, perfect for waiting in line or getting lost on the road. We'd like to offer you more, but who do you think we are? Hertz?
Hertz offers both #1 Club and Never Lost. No stress balls. It's your trip. Rent wisely.
CNN Tonight. New Orleans evacuates from the path of Hurricane Katrina, a killer storm of historic strength. Latest on devastation and recovery. Larry King Live. CNN Tonight, 9 Eastern.
For active traders, it all happens here, online. That's why we made Scottrade Elite fast, easy to navigate, and easy to customize, so everything's right where you want it. Streaming data, level 2 quotes, advanced technicals. You can test your strategies with virtual trading, manage multiple accounts from a single screen, and trade unlimited shares for just $7 flat, market or limit. Sometimes it pays to think inside the box. Demo Scottrade Elite today at ScottradeElite.com.
In a maximum security prison, Michael Schofield is going in for one reason. Michael? To get his brother out.
What kind of man would I be if I let you rot and die in here?
They're gonna kill your boy like they killed mine.
You're a dead man! Prison Break. The series premiere at 8/7 Central tonight on Fox. When the weather is the news, trust CNN. It's essential.
The information and the pictures continue to flow into us here at CNN. Pictures, we might be using that term loosely as you look at this practically completely whited out picture. This is New Orleans, one of the strong places hit by Hurricane Katrina, a storm that is covering 4 states right now, from Louisiana to Mississippi to Alabama and into the Florida Panhandle. We have correspondents and anchors and crews, as you can see, stationed all along that 4-state area. We'll be getting to many of them in just a moment. First of all, I want to go to Ed Rappaport. He is Deputy Director of the National Hurricane Center. He has been tracking Katrina, and he is in Miami this morning. Ed, good morning. A busy one indeed for you.
Yeah, that's right, and we're seeing now what we believe will be the last landfall for Katrina. Center moving ashore near the mouth of the Pearl River, which is along the Mississippi-Louisiana border. The worst of the weather is just east of that, in the Waveland, past Christian, and Bay St. Louis area of Mississippi.
Let's go ahead and bring our Chad Myers in, because 2 weather guys talking here is going to get us the best information possible. Chad, go ahead and ask Ed a question.
Well, we were talking about this storm now for days. We finally know where it went. We finally know where the most damage is, and where he was talking about from Gulfport right over to Biloxi, right there, Bay St. Louis. I mean, what are we expecting here? Are the winds still 125, 130 on land here?
That's our estimate at this point, and of course that's where the strongest storm surge is being driven ashore. We had reports earlier of 8-foot surge, but that was several hours ago, and that was not in the eye wall, so we expect that there still could be something on the order of a 15 or 20-foot storm surge in those towns we just talked about.
We've heard of a little bit of a levee problem in the New Orleans area. Have you had any updates at the Hurricane Center from that?
I've not had any update on that. Of course, we had the east wind and northeast wind driving the water westward towards where that levee breach occurred, and so we have concern, but we don't know how much water has made it over the top there.
Will there be any way to know when this finally dies off, when the storm surge will be over? Is it still 4 to 5 hours that Lake Pontchartrain will be well above normal?
Well, the issue for now for the New Orleans area and adjacent community is that the winds are shifting, so rather than being out of the north, they're going to be coming out of the northwest and then the west, so the pressure is going to be on a different portion of the levee, although the wind speeds will be coming down a bit. So we still have a few more hours there to weather the storm in New Orleans. The worst of the weather is just now getting to the Mississippi Gulf Coast, though, so they're going to have another 6 hours or so of, at least, of hurricane conditions.
Ed, we lost the radar out of Slidell earlier today. Do you know what the conditions were there when that happened?
Well, Slidell now, and about that time, was in the northwestern eye wall, so it's not surprising they were getting hurricane force conditions likely at that time. We've now switched over to another Weather Service office radar out of Mobile, and we can see very well the structure of the hurricane as it's pushing inland.
Ed, thank you very much. Phenomenal work this week. I couldn't tell you, and I can't tell the viewers how great of a job the forecast was here by you guys there for timing, wind speed, and direction. So thank you very much. Your work is well appreciated.
Thank you for the kind words.
Darren, back to you.
Of great use to those who paid attention. Some clearly did not.
Yeah.
Chad Myers, thank you. Chad, we're back to you, and Ed Rappaport at the National Hurricane Center. Thank you as well. Our Anderson Cooper is out in it. He is in Baton Rouge, as you were hearing Ed Rappaport saying about the wind direction, at least in New Orleans, expected not to die down, but to shift direction.
Yeah, and that's always an ominous time. I mean, a lot of what we do here is dependent on our satellite truck, and we try to position the satellite truck so wherever the winds are, it's not going to get literally lifted up like a sail. I mean, that satellite dish, when it's up, gets picked up by some of these winds like a sail and just knocked right over. And when those winds shift direction, that's a very tense time for us, because we want to make sure that whatever the wind shift is, the satellite dish and the satellite truck are still positioned where they are safe, where we can continue to operate. We are still feeling the winds coming north-south, and that way is north, and they are definitely still swinging toward this way, though judging by that crane, they've shifted maybe a little bit more to the east, just a little bit. You know, one of the things that we've been trying to do all throughout this morning, all throughout the pre-dawn hours, was really trying to give you at home a sense of what it's like being outside. We also would like to hear from you about what it's like for you if you have been weathering out this storm in this entire region, if you have been in your homes with your family seeking safety wherever you may be. We'd love to hear from you. Give us a call on 360 tonight at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. We will play some of your messages that you leave for us on this special number. The number is 1-866-NY-AC-360. That's 1-866-NY-360. Did I get that right? Yeah, I think I did. 1-866-NY-AC-360. Leave us a recorded message. We'll play some of those a little bit later on 360 tonight at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Rob Marciano's been standing by, getting hit hard in Biloxi. Let's check in with him. Rob, how are you holding up?
Anderson, not too bad right now, but you can see the awning, which we were standing under over an hour ago, being torn up by the winds now as we look from our third floor room here. What's notable now, though, is not so much that the tiles and the plywood are peeling off, because that has somewhat stopped, but the front part, the front framing of that awning, you can see that pulsating in the breeze. And that's because the winds have now switched from the east to the southeast, and the front side of that awning is getting pounded. What that also tells us is that the storm is almost flanking us to our west. We're looking due south now towards I-10. You can see obviously no traffic. You can see the what to the north, and at times due west at about probably 80-90 miles an hour. Winds gusting, though, easily over 100 miles an hour in order to get this sort of damage. The roof of this hotel obviously damaged. We can't see that, but rooms up and down the hotel are leaking badly. And at times with this window open, when the room fills up with air, when the winds come in at such a ferocious pace, the pressure inside this room gets so great, it's like a pressurized cabin in an aircraft. Your ears, you feel it in your ears, and you just want them to pop. So not sure if we're going to be staying in this location, because the winds will continue to strengthen out of the south, as it appears we're going to be getting the eastern flank of the eye wall often the strongest, and there are already windows that have been blown out on this side of the building. So we're probably going to be finding another locale. And Anderson, we too are having issues with our satellite truck. Because the winds have shifted, we're now going to have to put the dish down at some point here and relocate that so we can continue to get a shot up. That's the latest from Biloxi. Anderson, back to you.
We'll check in with Rob a little bit later on in Biloxi, as we have been over these last several hours. The technology we've been deploying has been really extraordinary. You've seen Gary Tuckman driving around in Hurricane 1, able to stay on the air even at the height of the storm. Sometimes, though, the most simple things fail. We all, in the field, use these IFBs, which are basically that's how we hear what's on the air and what we hear when people are talking to us. Unfortunately, they often get filled with water. That's what's happened to my IFB right now. So literally, I can't hear anything because there's water in the little tiny plastic cable. So I'm going to toss it back to Darren Kagan, who's standing by, hopefully with a dry IFB at the CNN Center in Atlanta. Darren?
Yes, Anderson, my IFB is dry, and that is the most creative excuse I've ever heard for not listening to the producers who are yelling in your ear. I got water in my IFB. Thank you, Anderson. And as he said, it is incredible technology that we're using to bring you this story all up and down the Gulf Coast, from Louisiana all the way to the panhandle of Florida. We have been getting Katrina-related photos and video from a lot of you, and we want to say thank you for that. We're calling you our citizen journalists, and we welcome your submissions. So please, number one, don't put yourself in any harm's way to get the photos, but let's go ahead and take a look at some of the photos that we've been receiving so far. One of our viewers has sent us pictures taken by his brother from inside the Louisiana Superdome in New Orleans. First Lieutenant Bert Sauce is with the Air National Guard inside the dome. He took these pictures showing the missing section of the roof. That's a key story that we've been following there, because there's thousands of people holed up believing that that was the safest place for them to take refuge in New Orleans. If you're wondering how he did it, Sauce used a cell phone camera to take the pictures, and the lighting is of course poor, but this is one of our first looks inside the damage at the Superdome. If you live in an area that's impacted by Hurricane Katrina, email your photos and videos to us, and you too can become one of CNN's citizen journalists. You can do that by logging on to cnn.com/stories. Please include your name, location, and phone number. And again, this reminder, please don't put yourself in harm's way. It's just not worth it. Our coverage does continue throughout the day, throughout the hour here on CNN, and we would like to welcome our international viewers watching from all around the world on CNN International. Our coverage for you, as well, clear across the U.S., continues in just a moment.
Keep watching CNN, your hurricane headquarters.
How can working with the right financial advisor answer the question,
what if?
What if I retire at 58?
At 62?
We both retire.
At the same time?
What if we help the kids buy their first house?
Make a big gift to our alma mater.
Want to live 6 months a year in London?
Spend the winter in Palm Beach.
What if we buy an antique store?
What if I want to adjust my plans a year from now?
Introducing Envision from Wachovia Securities, a new way of working with our financial advisors that starts with your life and plans your money around it. Talk to us.
Nobody knows this neighborhood better than Wendy Owens of Prudential Real Estate. Wendy's great with technology, and she's the best there is at bringing buyers and sellers together.
I've agreed to an early closing.
Professionals like Wendy Owens are why you choose Prudential Real Estate.
This summer, go to Priceline for the best deals on airfare. Name your own price and save up to $100 off other leading travel sites on each ticket you buy.
That's it.
Only at the new Priceline.
There's a new synthetic in town, Pennzoil Platinum. Relearn what you know about synthetic at pennzoilplatinum.com.
Between now and the time you serve it, keep the food as fresh as it can be. Only Sub-Zero has dual refrigeration, preserving food's goodness longer. And that is why the people who know fresh food best give Sub-Zero such enthusiastic approval.
Do your homework. Clean your room. Brush your teeth. Mow the lawn. Comb your hair. Feed the dog. When was the last time you only had to tell your kids something once? Telling them not to smoke is no different. Talk about it early and often. Go to keepkidsfromsmoking.com to learn more about Lorillard Tobacco Company's Youth Smoking Prevention Program.
Welcome back to our continuing coverage of Hurricane Katrina. We're looking at pictures from Biloxi, Mississippi. Hearing from Ed Rappaport, the National Hurricane Center, just a few minutes ago, this area, as hard hit as it has been so far, should still be under hurricane conditions for at least the next 6 hours. The Mississippi Gulf Coast clearly taking a hard hit here. As we watch Hurricane Katrina, we have correspondents spread up and down the Gulf Coast from Louisiana throughout Mississippi, Alabama, and into the Florida Panhandle as well. A big part of the focus has been on New Orleans. When Hurricane Katrina went slamming into that famous city, winds were about 145 miles an hour. New Orleans catching a little bit of a break by the direction and the exact place where Hurricane Katrina hit. The news so far, the levees that were a big concern in that city so far do appear to be holding, but not out of the dark yet. Not too far away from there in Baton Rouge. Also, we've been watching with our Anderson Cooper as there have been ebbs and flows of the storm, different bands going through there. Going back to Anderson now live in Baton Rouge. Anderson?
And Darren, we're definitely in an ebb right now, and let's hope it stays that way. A little bit of a sun, a little bit of sky peeking through, the clouds moving very fast, but the winds have died down considerably. Let's hope it stays this way. Let's hope it's not just a lull between another outer band of the storm. Very briefly, I just want to encourage viewers who have been riding out the storm at home. We want to hear from you at CNN. We want to hear your experiences, what it was like for you, what it was like for your family members, what you thought of the storm. You can call us at 1-866-NY-AC-360, 1-866-NY-AC-360. We'll play some of your messages on 360 tonight at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, 6 Central Time. I also want to talk right now with an official from the American Red Cross who is in Biloxi, David Ruddock, who's standing by. David, what are you seeing there? How many people have you been helping?
Well, Anderson, probably like yourself, we're getting blasted here in Biloxi. It's just impossible to get out into this storm right now. As you might have heard, the Red Cross is launching its largest mobilization of resources to a single disaster in their organization's history. But we can't do that until this storm subsides, and it's safe for our volunteers and staff to go into the areas that have been affected and provide the assistance that people are going to need. Oddly enough, we're looking at 120, 130 mile an hour winds here. There was a family that was out in the street with 2 mattresses tied to their truck, and they were lost. I mean, they really didn't know what to do insofar as, getting under the underpass. So they came into the hotel, and we're going to try to make sure that they have a place to stay tonight.
Now live from CBS 4 Weather Control, this is a Hurricane Katrina update.
I'm Elliot Rodriguez. Welcome to our continuing coverage of Hurricane Katrina. These are new pictures from inside the Superdome in New Orleans, Louisiana, where up to 10,000 people are seeking refuge from Hurricane Katrina. 2 holes have been ripped in the curved roof of the structure, letting rain pour in on the people seeking shelter there from this Category 4 storm. At last count, some 9,000 people who could not evacuate the New Orleans area went to the Superdome in New Orleans, and right now they are feeling the impact of this very powerful storm. Another new bit of video coming in right now. These are pictures from Slidell, Louisiana. That's a small community about 50 miles northeast of New Orleans, now feeling the force of Katrina. Wind and rain is pummeling the area, blowing trees around as the storm comes ashore. People who didn't get out of the Big Easy have to be very uneasy right now, feeling firsthand the devastating power of Hurricane Katrina. And here in South Florida, as of 11 o'clock this morning, here's how the numbers stack up on those without power. In Miami-Dade County, 207,000 people remain without electricity. In Broward County, the number is 94,400, which is greatly improved from the numbers we have been seeing. So those FP&L crews are out there. However, we do need a lot of patience. All right, CBS 4 storm specialist David Bernard has been tracking Katrina all night and all morning. He joins us now with the very latest information on the storm. David?
Elliot, here is the latest look at real-time Doppler, and I'll go to this side of the screen to show you. Just show that video from Slidell. Now, it was dark when we saw that video. Here's Slidell. They're now in the southwestern eye, and and the southwestern eye wall is getting ready to come across Slidell. They are going to have very strong hurricane force winds now coming in from the west, and so there could be a storm surge coming from the west side of Lake Pontchartrain now into Slidell, Louisiana. The good news from this picture is it looks like at least the rain is ending over the New Orleans area, but hurricane force gusts are still occurring. The wind field is extremely large with this hurricane, and these hurricane force gusts will not subside probably until we get to later on this afternoon. The storm is continuing to move off to the north at 16 miles per hour. And right now in the eastern quadrant of the eye, Gulfport, Biloxi, all these casinos, big resorts being built down here, really being pummeled. And look at the Mobile Bay. Look how Mobile, Alabama sits at the top of the Mobile Bay that's kind of shaped like a triangle. A massive storm surge is now going into Mobile Bay, where they were forecasting 8 to 10 feet of water to inundate low-lying sections of lower Alabama. So again, this will be a story from Alabama all the way over to southeast Louisiana and even around Pensacola. On the outer edges of this hurricane, they've been getting strong winds this morning, and there is some storm surge that is going to be coming into parts of the extreme western Florida panhandle as well. Here is the latest advisory into weather control, and the storm was located, last report, 35 miles east-northeast of New Orleans. Winds now 125 miles per hour. Still a major Category 3 hurricane, and again, moving to the north at 16 miles per hour. This storm is going to be up around Memphis by tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning, somewhere around Cleveland, Ohio, and then continuing into southeastern Canada as we go into Friday morning, and it's probably going to cause damage even further north. Not the same as at the coast, but still some wind and heavy rain damage is certainly going to be possible. Here's another look at the radar loop. Clearly the eye is much larger and more disorganized than it was earlier this morning as the storm slowly begins to wind down as it interacts with more land. But you can see this dry air that's coming from the west, and it's causing the rain to break up over the New Orleans area. But from Biloxi and Pensacola, very strong rain bands. And in fact, these bands extending all the way to Apalachicola, this is where we could have tornado-producing rain bands for the next several hours. That's where they're most likely to occur, is the northeastern eye wall on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and especially over into the Florida Panhandle. That segment of the hurricane is where you're most likely to see tornadic thunderstorms. So that's the threat for the Florida Panhandle right now, and also, I imagine, high tides again coming into Pensacola. Unfortunately, this kind of setup is probably going to mean some beach erosion around there as well. The thing that we have to remember right now, Elliot, is that we're just beginning to start to get reports. Later today, when the winds finally come down and they can get in and around New Orleans and some of these other areas, it'll become much more evident of what the damage is. I remember last year in Ivan hitting in the middle of the night, and people thought, oh, it's not that bad, and then they got down to the beach, and it was just amazing the destruction that was done. This storm is a lot stronger than Ivan was when it made landfall in the Florida Panhandle. So I imagine the scene in Alabama and Mississippi and southeast Louisiana is not going to be pretty. And I think we have Bryan Norcross available in weather control with some additional information.
All right, David, I wanted to get your thoughts on this because I was just here looking at the real-time Doppler 4, and now with the eye positioned up here to the northeast of the lake, does that not now bring the winds around on the lake and push that water into potentially Slidell and other communities there at the east end of the lake that do not have levees?
Yes, and we were just now talking about that, Brian, because we had some video that we ran out of Slidell just a few moments ago. Now, the video was dark, so obviously these scenes are from Slidell. This was obviously, though, before sunrise, and the eye wall wasn't even close to them. Obviously, these people wouldn't be outside because they were getting 100+ mile-per-hour winds, now in the last few minutes, and it was causing this kind of damage. But now, if we look at real-time Doppler, which you were referring to, and we'll go back to that and see, here's Slidell, and you see how the lake kind of curves in right here. So here's the center, and remember, the winds are going around the hurricane like this. So now the winds are coming from the west to the east across the lake. During Tropical Storm Isidore a couple of years ago, we had tremendous storm surge flooding over here on the east side of the lake that many of these areas hadn't seen before, because a lot of these developments are new. They don't have the same kind of protection that the city of New Orleans has with the hurricane protection levee system. So right now, we're probably seeing a rush of water going from the western end of Lake Pontchartrain and back building into the southeastern corner of the lake. And we're going to see scenes out of there of a lot of homes being inundated by floodwaters. And there's some very expensive developments in this side of Lake Pontchartrain. And for that matter, you can see, as you mentioned, around Bay St. Louis and Gulfport, tremendous surge going in there. And this is past Christiane right here, this little inlet. That was the place where Hurricane Camille made landfall in 1969.
Now, I remember I was there in Louisiana after Isidore and Lily. What was that? Was that 2 years ago, 3 years ago now?
I think it was 3.
Yeah, 3 years ago. The years just fly by with these hurricanes. And I remember the tremendous flooding up there in Slidell, and people just seemed so surprised that such a thing could happen to them, even though they live on that lake and they don't have any levee protecting them. Do you think now that people understand that that's a high-risk situation there, and this time they would be more ready for flooding in those suburbs?
Well, I think now they're going to understand it. And I'd even had a conversation a couple years ago with Max Mayfield, director of the Hurricane Center, and he did a flyover with the State Emergency Management Director of Lake Pontchartrain, and he had not been over this area in years, and he was shocked at the amount of development from this community, Mandeville, all the way back to Slidell, and he just said, this is trouble in the making. And obviously that came true a few years ago with Isidore, and I know it's going to come true today. And unfortunately, when you go 40 years without a major hurricane, it's been 40 years since Hurricane Betsy in 1965, you end up with a community that is complacent. And even after seeing what Andrew did to South Florida, and Andrew was a near miss for New Orleans. You know, it ended up going into Lafayette in south central Louisiana, and so New Orleans got the fringe effects with it. That still was not a wake-up call for this community, and I think sometimes you have to actually, unfortunately, have the disaster to finally get the message. But there is a lot of proactive measures that could be taken in this community, in addition to, you know, the hurricane protection levee that's been going on for 40 years, that may be taken now because of what's transpired today.
David, look at the radar behind you there. I'm moving it up. Now, is Lake Borgne big enough to get any storm surge coming on the other side, but, you know, back down toward the Gulf now that the you know, now the winds have switched around?
Okay, this is Lake Borgne right here, what Bryan is talking about. Now that the winds are coming this way, there's really not anything, there's nobody lives out here, so that, you know, wouldn't be a concern. It's actually good. Now there are people that live right here.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Right.
Yeah, and so when the hurricane was south of here earlier, and we had that levee breach in New Orleans East we were talking about, all these areas are outside the hurricane protection levee area. I know they're completely flooded because I've seen them flood in winter storms from Gulf lows. So we've had probably a tremendous surge come in from Lake Borgne, maybe somewhere between 10 and 20 feet. And so all these areas in St. Bernard Parish outside of the levee, I know are underwater, and same with down the river here into Plaquemines Parish. But, you know, now the hurricane's lifting out to the west, it should get a little bit better there. Although a lot of this water is going to get trapped, obviously, but at least the tide should start going down. But it's going to get worse over here where it's blowing back into the land.
You know, an interesting thing, look up there at the eye now. The eye is actually almost filled in all the way around.
Yeah.
Where it had opened up in New Orleans.
Right.
I talked to Bryan Andrews, and the weather was over in New Orleans, although I think if the wind will still blow there for a while, although he said it had gone essentially calm. But look, it's all filled in, and they're getting pounded in Mississippi now.
This is terrible what's ongoing right in here, and whatever Katrina has left, this is what's blowing the maximum force right here. Bay St. Louis, past Christiane, Gulfport, Biloxi, and as I mentioned before, big resorts all along here on the Mississippi Gulf Coast back to Mobile, numerous high-rise casinos, and you know, the economic impact is going to be enormous for Mississippi over there, because quite honestly, this is their economy right there. You're looking at it, and it's just going to be a devastating blow, not unlike the Florida Panhandle, what they've gone through, just being devastated by Ivan and then having the setbacks this year with Arlene and Dennis.
All right. All right, David Bernard, thanks very much. And the other thing that's going on here as we look at real-time Doppler 4 is over here in Alabama. You see where Mobile is there, and Biloxi, we're getting one tornado warning after the other in this part of Alabama and this part of Mississippi. And some of those have even extended over into the Florida Panhandle. It's a very, very volatile situation here on the fringe of this hurricane. It is the northeastern quadrant that is where tornadoes are produced, especially when they're moving to the north and they move over land and they get mixed in with some cooler air that exists as they go further north. And we're just seeing one after the other. Now the National Weather Service has had a tornado watch out for some time over there, so this isn't at all surprising, but we haven't been talking about it very much because we've been concentrating on the center of the hurricane, where the hurricane itself, the strongest winds associated with the rotation of the storm will do the most damage, and the storm surge will be. But we may end up hearing about a lot of damage unless they're very, very lucky and those tornadoes kind of weave in and out of things over there to the east in other parts of Mississippi and Alabama. All right, that's it from here for now. Elliot, we'll see you back at noon.
Brian, David, thank you very much. For now, let's go to live coverage of Hurricane Katrina on CNN. Stay with CBS 4 News for a full report coming up on CBS 4 News at noon in just a little while.
It is not storm surge. We have not seen storm surge where I am. I'm in between 4 to 6 miles from the coast right now, but it is plenty strong. As I said, on the 3rd floor, we've seen windows break out. We saw what we thought was plywood coming off of windows. It turned out to be part of the roof coming off of the hotel. They have evacuated the 3rd floor. And let me give you a look inside here in the hotel. There are families in here. The entire 3rd floor is down here. People have brought their dogs, entire families. As you look in there, you just hear people on the phones to their loved ones. If they can get a cell signal out, people saying, "I love you." People with their pets, a lot of dogs. A lot of people brought their dogs with them out here. Let's go ahead and shut this window and try to keep them as dry as possible. Really a chaotic situation. We're going to try to stick close to the building here. Steve, come on over here. Let's keep you back here. As that last band passed through, it does, believe it or not, this is kind of a more calm part of the storm compared to what it was literally just a minute ago. We saw bits of the roof just flying off just by the dozens. Bits of the roof, shingles, plywood, 2x4s coming off of this roof. Right here, this stucco part here, you can feel it, it's hollow. We actually saw this starting to shift a little bit. This sliding door over here, as you can see, there's a Spanish language network doing a live shot right here. That sliding door came off its hinges. I'm gonna go back over here. Steve, come on back over here. Let's try to keep you back over here. We're going to try to come back in this nook here. Come on, Steve. Let's get back over here. All right. It's definitely a fierce, chaotic scene out here. A lot of debris and a lot of storm surge coming through this parking lot.
That is Dan Weir. He's a reporter with our affiliate WEAR, based in Pensacola, Florida. He moved westward, filing that report from Biloxi, Mississippi. So we've been focusing on 4 states along the coast, the Gulf Coast, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida. But if you were listening to our Chad Myers earlier, if you're in Georgia, if you're in Tennessee, Ohio, Kentucky, you want to be alert. Katrina is coming your way. Our coverage and more information on that straight ahead. As we go to break, we look at pictures brought to us by our Rob Marciano and his crew from Biloxi, Mississippi. Live pictures. We're back after this.
Keep watching CNN, your hurricane headquarters.
65 million years ago, an asteroid wiped out the dinosaurs and left something behind. Something that could destroy us as they were destroyed. Read Tyrannosaur Canyon, the new novel by Douglas Preston.
CNN Tonight. New Orleans evacuates from the path of Hurricane Katrina, a killer storm of historic strength. Latest on devastation and recovery. Larry King Live. CNN Tonight, 9 Eastern.
Everybody's going digital with their cameras and photos. The number of digital photo prints made will increase by 1,000% from 2003 to 2006. So be the first in your area to own the one and only digital photo processing machine for private entrepreneurs, the Digital Photo Express. It makes the best prints possible on a special new paper that's both tear-proof and waterproof, with colors guaranteed not to fade for 100 years. It also has a scanner for reproducibility reducing or enlarging photos and can save everything to CD as well as printing it. Plus, it sells all kinds of photo novelty items like t-shirts, hats, cups, mouse pads, and more. This amazing machine takes credit cards and check cards. The money from each transaction is deposited immediately right into your bank account. So hurry, we'll help you grab the best high-traffic locations before anyone else. Don't delay, call now for your free information package. Be first.
Homeowners, the Fed just raised interest rates again, so credit card rates are likely going up too. But guess what? Mortgage rates have stayed low, and if you act fast, you can take advantage of it. Right now, Countrywide Home Loans can offer you a no closing cost debt consolidation loan. Let me repeat that. No closing costs. So you can get the cash you need to pay off your credit cards and lower your monthly payments. As America's #1 lender, no one can do what Countrywide can.
Call 1-800-642-3094.
You're a homeowner, right? So why are you paying as much as 18% interest on your credit cards? Right now, Countrywide Home Loans is offering a home equity line of credit with an introductory rate of just 3.99%. And this interest is usually tax deductible. It's an incredible rate, and it's from America's leading lender. Apply today and you could pay off your high-rate credit cards with this low introductory rate of 3.99%. No one can do what Countrywide can. Call today, 1-800-641-8753.
When the weather is the news, trust CNN. It's essential.
Hurricane Katrina is showing little to no respect for state lines. This picture coming to us from the causeway in Mobile, Alabama. You can see the water stirred up there. Hard to tell how hard it's raining or the wind is blowing at this point, but we're going to head westward, cross over the Mississippi state line into Biloxi, Mississippi, where it's been very clear how intense and how awful the storm is at that point. Hearing earlier from Ed Rappaport and Chad Myers, they can expect in Biloxi to still be under these hurricane conditions at least for the next 5 to 6 hours. Let's get the latest conditions and bring in our Chad Myers, who has been doing just such a smash-up job. Literally, I guess that's kind of appropriate when you're talking about a Category 4 hurricane.
I guess. And so have our directors, so I'll butter them up and ask them to try to bring that Alabama shot back.
The causeway picture?
The causeway shot?
Okay, I think it's tape.
Okay, whatever it is. There is another road under that water that you can't see. I've looked at this
like
causeway shot. This is a bridge. I believe this is the I-10, but in fact, there's another road under there completely covered up that you can't even see.
Or was.
Well, was.
Yeah.
Now it's covered in silt. Yeah, we'll continue to try to keep up that's what I was just looking at, actually, the Mobile water pouring in, just getting forced into Mobile Bay, up around 4 to 4.5 feet right now, with some flood warnings going on there. We'll go to the maps behind me here. Biloxi, seeing the wind coming on shore. That's where Rob Marciano is right there. Gulfport, you had all of the eastern eye wall, and now we've broken up the eye wall. There isn't as much of the eye wall to the south here. And so therefore, there's not as much wind going to be in these lower squall areas. The biggest part of the wind right now is in this red. And that's where that's going to be happening because there was a lack of a southeastern eye wall at the time of the second landfall. The first one happened in Louisiana. This was a little bit easier, maybe 10 or 15 miles easier. And I'll tell you what, when you're talking about shingles and roofs coming off, 15 miles an hour makes all kinds of difference. Now, there's another weather source that I can show you to show you what happened already in this storm. So we call it GR113. It's our Viper system. That entire area now, we've moved you back toward New Orleans. Look at some of the numbers here on Viper. These are 24-hour rainfall totals over New Orleans. 10 inches right over Lake Pontchartrain and the Causeway. We can zoom you in now. The French Quarter right here, out toward the Garden District, 8, out toward Kenner, 8 inches, and some spots up here. Here's the Lake Pontchartrain. Here's the Causeway going across. 10 inches of rain out of the sky. And then not only what is coming over some of the levees there that we know of. There will be more rain coming in with this storm as well. We'll zoom you out, show you what's going to go on in the next 24 hours. The bulk of the rain headed right over Meridian, Mississippi, Hattiesburg, and then right on up even into Tennessee. These are the 24-hour rainfall totals expected. This is tonight, midnight now. Hattiesburg already 4.7 of rain, 4.7 inches expected for today. Now we'll go back to the other maps again, back to them, and I'll show you what's going on a little bit farther to the east. The threat of some tornadoes with this system. Now, this isn't really a wind threat so much, but from Gulfport to Biloxi, eye wall still making landfall. To the east of there, see these speckled red dots? Those are the strong cells, individual cells. At times we can call them mini supercells coming off the hurricane. Every one of them can spin a little bit, and that spin can spin an F0 or an F1 tornado. We've probably had 20 to 25 tornado warnings so far this morning for these little storms. None of them yet that we know of have touched down. They've all been Doppler indicated. Darren.
All right, Chad, we're going to focus. I think you had 3 inches of rain from Mobile, Alabama over the next 24 hours?
So far, and that's how much they've had, plus another 3, correct.
Okay, so that doesn't tell the whole story, though, because you have the wind and other things taking place there. Our Kathleen Koch is standing by in Mobile, Alabama. Let's go to her live and see what she can tell us with the pictures. Kathleen.
Hi. Well, we're here, Darren, in Mobile. I don't know if you can see the street behind me. It's beginning to be littered with tree branches. From time to time, you see them tumbling down the road like tumbleweeds. This kind of thing is also blowing down the road and through the air. This is a metal top for a lamppost, I believe, from the garage next door. But this is the kind of thing that's just right now defying gravity and just simply flying through the air. The conditions have gotten so dangerous, actually, with the weather in Mobile that you did see a lone police car go behind me just a second ago, but they've advised citizens to stay off the street. There is no curfew, but the police and fire department are now limiting calls. They're only responding to the direst of emergencies. And Darren, we've been talking to the Mobile Emergency Management Agency. They say the calls have been pouring in as the waters have been rising throughout the city. People are saying, help, we want to be evacuated, come and get us. And they're saying, sorry, it's just too late. We have a list of flooded streets in the city that's a mile long, but ironically, some of the major streets are Water Street, Telegraph Street, Broad Street, Beauregard. A couple of streets that make you feel like you're in New Orleans. Royal Street, Canal Street flooded, Jackson. 21 streets in the city and 18 in the county are also impassable, not because of water, but because of downed power lines and downed trees, again, like the branches that we're seeing coming down around here. We're having entire trees fall down and block the roadways here. Now, of course, everything in the city is pretty much shut down today. The schools are closed today. They're closed tomorrow. The local airports are all shut down. Here in our hotel, we've actually had to, some of us evacuate down from the upper levels of the hotel and then evacuate to the opposite side of the hotel because the winds have been so fierce. Some of the more recent gusts, I guess about a half an hour ago, were recorded at the airport in Mobile at 74 miles an hour. The winds were such that they were actually driving the rain through the closed hotel room windows. On my window on the 10th floor, the windowsill was like a river. The water was just flowing down it. So they evacuated us down to the other side of the building to the 7th floor. But it's bumpy here, but we're getting through. We know that to the east of us, the west of us, I should say, it's a lot rougher, Darren.
And Kathleen, stay with me just a second because I want to go ahead and welcome once again our viewers joining us on CNN International, watching from all around the world. And Kathleen, before I let you go, you have some personal perspective because you grew up in this part of the country, so you know only too well how these storms can be.
I certainly did, Darren. I actually moved to the Mississippi Gulf Coast to a tiny city that right now, as far as we know, is getting hammered by the storm. That's Bay St. Louis. And I moved there in 1973, 4 years after Hurricane Camille, into a home, ironically, that was said to be hurricane-proof. That was very popular after Camille hit in '69 to rebuild homes and promise homeowners they would never be devastated again. So after Katrina blows through, I'm very interested in going back there and seeing if that actually came to pass. I have some serious doubts, though.
All right. Well, we wish the folks well in your old hometown. Kathleen Koch reporting to us from Mobile, Alabama. Want to move now to the west to Biloxi, Mississippi. We've been basically riding out the storm with our Rob Marciano. We saw him when he was outside. Then he had to move to the 3rd floor of the hotel where he's staying. And now he's been able to move back down to the lobby with the latest on Hurricane Katrina and how it's hitting that area. Rob. All right. Well, clearly Rob is moving around. I think, though, we might have him. There he is.
Are we on?
Rob, yeah, we're on. What can you tell us, Rob? You've moved down to the lobby.
I guess we're on. Hi, Darren. Can't hear you, but I'll tell you this. We're in the hotel. 900 people are hunkered down right here. No power, no phone lines. They just got to have each other and their pets to comfort them. Look at all the beautiful dogs that are hanging out here, keeping everybody company. I tell you, it is a, you know, with the crazy, having the animals around really is a comfort. It really is a comfort, especially to the kids. A lot of people are visibly frightened at times. Power is out here, but they do have an emergency generator, and for some reason or another, cable is still on, so they're able to watch our coverage as well. We're boarded up here on the northern side. You see the plywood that's boarded up there. So they're all just hanging out here.
Okay, as you can see, a little spotty with Rob Marciano's signal coming to us from the lobby of that hotel in Biloxi, Mississippi. An interesting picture of all the people, the guests kind of hunkered down together, and the animals clearly stress-free, a dog party for them. All right, not that easy and that happy for people across 4 states into Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida. Also hearing word, Georgia, Kentucky, Ohio, Tennessee, this storm of great concern for you as well. Our coverage continues, the latest on Hurricane Katrina and its after effects after this break.
Keep watching CNN, your hurricane headquarters.
Will you spend your retirement sitting in a comfy chair, watching the world go by? Or will you be out there with your sleeves rolled up, changing the very shape of it, saying, "Hello, future"? Call your advisor about the powerful resources of Lincoln Financial Group.
Find your path and share the journey. The people of the United Methodist Church.
Somewhere between where you are and where you're going, there's a Super 8. See you along the way.
We're making better choices every day to keep our cholesterol and blood pressure healthy.
Like choosing to eat more fish and less red meat.
And now we're choosing a new multivitamin, One-A-Day Cholesterol Plus.
Introducing new One-A-Day Cholesterol Plus, the only complete multivitamin with polycosanol and heart-supporting nutrients to help maintain healthy cholesterol and blood pressure.
For us, there's no better choice.
Straight ahead on CBS 4 News at noon, Hurricane Katrina pounding the Louisiana and Mississippi coasts.
Part of the Superdome's roof peeled away as thousands of New Orleans residents seek shelter inside.
Here in South Florida, crews are still out in force trying to restore utilities knocked out by the storm's punch.
Parts of South Florida also continue to dry out and clean up.
And Neighbors for Neighbors jumps into action to help those hardest hit by the hurricane. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Elliot Rodriguez.
I'm Angela Ray, and for Joy Purdy. CBS 4 News at noon starts right now.
Now, live, this is CBS 4 News at noon.
First at noon, the damage spreads far and wide. Hurricane Katrina's strong winds ripping the roof off a building in Biloxi, Mississippi, and the storm is not over yet. Katrina made landfall between Grand Isle, Louisiana, and the mouth of the Mississippi River. These are live pictures right now from Alabama, which is being pounded by this storm as we speak.
That storm is also battering New Orleans, where CBS 4's Bryan Andrews is hunkered down in a hotel. He filed this report via telephone a short while ago, and I can tell you, well, it's been a hard time for Bryan. At some point, he was sitting by a window, and the window started shattering. And, you know, one minute he had electricity, the next minute it was gone. There's babies there, there's old people there. He's really been a comforting force for them. Let's listen to his report.
There is tremendous damage in downtown New Orleans, and right now it appears we're getting a lull in the winds. We couldn't even step outside earlier. Stuff was flying through the air, bits and pieces of glass, concrete, you name it, it was out there and could whack you in the head and kill you, so we decided to stay inside. Here's what we've gathered so far from the New Orleans police. Yes, one of the levees was breached down in the lower 9th district of New Orleans. There are reports of people on their roofs right now looking for help. Also, police officers were told if they run into any cadavers not to touch them, that they might be contaminated because of the water situation down there. We heard that there was a fire burning somewhere and that an apartment complex on the other side of the Mississippi River had collapsed and that there were people inside. The police chief has given the word for all police officers to stay off the road until the order is given that it's safe enough to drive again. So really they're having a hard time getting help to these people who need it. Out of the Superdome, there was a report that part of the roof gave way, that a hole opened up, and that water was shooting into the Superdome, getting all these people wet who were seeking shelter there. There are no reports of deaths as of right now, but again, we have that situation where there's a tremendous amount of flooding down in this lower 9 neighborhood. There's a report of a fire that's going on. There's an apartment building that's collapsed on the other side of the Mississippi River. One of the mid-rise office buildings that's next to our hotel, the facade collapsed onto the top of an SUV and a sports car. There is debris and broken glass everywhere. I'm told that at the Hilton Hotel along the Mississippi River, the majority of the windows on the upper floors were blown out by the force of this hurricane, and that beds were sucked out into the river and it's flying through the air with bed sheets and furniture. That it's just been an amazing scene. The power of the destruction of these hurricane-force winds making their way through New Orleans. As I mentioned, right now we appear to have a lull in the action. I'm looking out the window here, and the winds have kind of died down for the moment, but it doesn't mean it's over. That's where we stand right now. Reporting from New Orleans, I'm Bryan Andrews, CBS 4 News.
In Biloxi, Mississippi, roofs are already starting to give way to Katrina. You can see the strong winds blowing off part of that roof. This is at a Comfort Inn at the Hard Rock restaurant. The relentless rain is causing heavy flooding, leaving part of that building underwater. Our CBS 4 team coverage continues now with Jennifer Donnellan. She has the latest from Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Hurricane Katrina was downgraded as it's made its way across land. But this should really put things in perspective. I'm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, well west of where the center of the storm is, and this is what we have been dealing with all morning long. Parts of ceiling fans falling to the ground from the roof above me. But this is nothing compared to what is going on east of us. The power and fury of Katrina is being felt along the Gulf Coast. It came ashore in Louisiana early this morning as a massive Category 4 hurricane with winds topping 145 miles per hour and giant waves that are threatening to overrun entire towns. New Orleans is one of those cities that could be in for a long day. Katrina turned to the east before hitting land, which means its weaker side is pounding the Big Easy. But already there are power outages and reports of damage to the Superdome's roof, where some 9,000 people are riding out the storm. New Orleans city officials believe about 80% of the city's 480,000 residents heeded the mandatory order to evacuate.
Not worrying about all the material things left behind, because it's not about that, it's about saving lives. You know, you can't get that bad.
The effects of Katrina are being felt all over. We are in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. That is the Mississippi behind me. We are 70 miles west of New Orleans. This is a powerful storm.
Some streets and roads will be flooded. They may not be passable. Trees will be down. Power will be out.
In Biloxi, Mississippi, Katrina whipped up the surf and began flooding roads early this morning. Before it's over, Katrina's powerful winds and torrential rains will be felt across the entire Gulf Coast and points further north, with everyone bracing for what might be ahead. Mississippi and Louisiana are expected to be pounded by this storm throughout the day. It's going to be a very long day. This morning we heard reports that more than 300,000 people were without power. That number is expected to increase. We've also heard isolated reports of flooding in people's homes in New Orleans up to the ceilings. In Baton Rouge, Louisiana, I'm Jennifer Donnellan, CBS 4 News.
Okay, that's Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We now have been able to establish telephone communication with Bryan Andrews, who's right there in downtown New Orleans, where they have seen the brunt of the storm. Bryan, first of all, how are you holding up? We just lost, I'm told we just this very second lost Bryan Andrews. We're going to try to reestablish communication with Bryan Andrews. Of course, the main concern there in New Orleans is the flooding situation with those levees that protect the city, which we've been talking about, and we're going to talk about that more in depth in just a moment. We now want to find out where Hurricane Katrina is at this hour.
And for that, we turn to Chief Meteorologist Bryan Norcross live in Weather Control. Bryan, fill us in.
All right, let's take a look at the real-time Doppler 4 here, because we can see the eye still intact over Mississippi. It's over extreme southeastern Mississippi there, just north of Bay St. Louis. But still, the flow, the wind is coming in off the Gulf, and this is the area from Bay St. Louis over to Biloxi that we think the highest storm surge will be in that 20, 25-foot range with waves on top of that. But having said that, all the way out here, you see these strong bands out here near Mobile, Alabama, and there is Mobile Bay right there, and the water is extremely high and flooding in Mobile Bay as well because they're getting this strong southerly flow coming in as well. So it's not over yet to the east of the storm. Now, down here in New Orleans, it's essentially over. The wind is slackening off. There are a few little showers passing by, but some dry air filtered in on this side of the storm, and that helped weaken it. So New Orleans can go about figuring out what exactly has happened there in that city. Now, here you see the numbers as of the latest advisory, the 11 o'clock advisory, at 30.2, 89.6, winds down to 125, and of course the winds will just continue to go down as we go here. North at 16, pressure 927 millibars, continues to come up, 35 miles east-northeast of New Orleans. Now, the storm is just going to take off through Mississippi, spread hurricane force winds throughout that state, and then weaken as it moves up into the Tennessee Valley and the Ohio Valley, and then spread all the way into southern Canada here by later in the week. Here's the way the satellite picture looks. You can see the storm develop from a very well-organized storm, although by this time, 12 hours ago, some of that dry air was starting to come in. Now watch it come north, and then you get a lot of dry air here on the west side. Notice it's very ragged there, and that's why the weather is going to improve in New Orleans very soon. But on this side, you can see it goes all the way over here to Panama City, very bad on the eastern side of the storm. Now, David Bernard, who came to us from New Orleans, has a lot of experience with New Orleans hurricanes, is here. He's going to take a look at the real-time Doppler 4 and explain exactly what has gone on and what's going on now, David.
And of course, Brian, the details are going to be slow in coming in, but we have a general idea of what has transpired, and it's all in the track. And right now, as Brian was showing you, this is the center of Hurricane Katrina, and then here is New Orleans. So this was the first direct hit by a major hurricane in New Orleans in 40 years. The last time it happened, 1965, Hurricane Betsy, and everyone here in South Florida remembers that storm because it affected here and then came to New Orleans. And Katrina, it looks like it was just the same type of storm. However, this time the storm, even though it came over New Orleans, the east side of town, it went to the east. And what's really a major factor, and if New Orleans is going to see tremendous surge flooding from the Gulf waters pouring into the city, pouring into Lake Pontchartrain here, and then overtopping the levees, is the track would have had to have been out here, west of the airport, across the west side of town. So really what we were talking about today is that we had a difference of 30 or 40 miles in the track would have meant unbelievable storm surge flooding in the city of New Orleans. Instead, with the center passing over the city and slightly east, it looks like we've had maybe one, possibly two small breaches in the levee on the eastern side of town because of persistent winds, which unfortunately does sound like it has caused major flooding, possibly 8-foot water 8 feet deep in some of these subdivisions, but it has not encompassed the entire metropolitan area. And again, if we look at a topographical map without the radar on it, that's New Orleans. Here's the lake. Here's Lake Bourne and the Gulf down to the south and east. Really, you're looking at an island here, and that is what makes New Orleans such a unique, vulnerable target for hurricanes along the United States coastline. But today, the damage is going to be horrific. No power, no phones, debris. There is some flooding from rain, but the ultimate in storm surge flooding appears to be avoided this time because the storm went here instead of over here. Brian.
There's a lot of concentration on New Orleans, of course, but we know that the situation has been very bad further to the east. All right, let me send it back to you in the studio.
Okay, we've got some pictures, Brian, if you'll look with me. This is Pensacola, and there were some heavy surf we were looking at right here. Brian, what's the situation there in Pensacola right now?
Well, Pensacola is, is going to get a significant storm surge. Now, they were predicting 10 feet in Mobile, which is not that far from Pensacola. Let me just look and see if Pensacola is reporting, because we're not getting any weather data from a lot of this place. Yes, it is. Pensacola has winds sustained up about 38, 39 miles an hour, gusting to 57 miles an hour coming in out of the south. So there, you know, that's pushing that water in. A lot of power in that hurricane, but they are on the fringe.
All right, Brian, thank you. Elliot.
Now, here at home, South Florida residents are still recovering after Hurricane Katrina slammed ashore. More than 300,000 people are still without power. CBS 4's Ileana Varela is live in Miami right now with the latest on the restoration of power to those folks. Ileana.
Well, Elliot, there's no question that Katrina has turned South Florida into a community of haves and have-nots. You're among the well-off if you have power, not as fortunate if you don't. And as you just mentioned, there are more than 300,000 have-nots in South Florida right now. The latest numbers that we have from FPNL came out at 9 o'clock this morning. Miami-Dade County, 207,000 customers still without power, 94,400 without power in Broward. However, FPNL is calling its restoration effort amazing. They know that even though there's 300,000 customers without power, they have restored power to some 80% of those who lost it originally in the storm. That's more than 1 million people. They have some 12,000 crews out there working feverishly to get everybody back online. However, if you're not one of those who has power at the moment, those figures probably don't mean a lot to you. You're home literally sweating it out, wondering when are they going to get to me, when are they going to get to me, when are they going to get to my neighborhood? That's the question that we asked the Vice President in charge of restoration for FPNL.
Customers all along is that 90% should expect to be restored to power by Tuesday. We've been very confident about that. Today, yesterday I should say, we said Pompano, north of Commercial Boulevard will be 100% restored by Tuesday, and south of Southwest 184th Street will be restored by Tuesday, and also the island of Key Biscayne will be restored by Tuesday. Everywhere else, today we're coming out with more specific estimated times of restoration. We're providing that later today, where the last customer in each of these geographic areas can expect to be without power.
Now, one of the big survivor stories in the aftermath of Katrina has been phone service, and that's probably in great part because most phone lines are underground. Here are the latest figures that we have from Bell South. As of this morning in Miami-Dade County, there were 28,300 phone lines down. That's just 1.8% of customers. And in Broward County, 14,400 lines still down. That's just 1.5% of customers. Another thing that a lot of people have come up to us and are concerned about is their cable and satellite service. We've talked to Comcast and Adelphia, the big cable companies here in South Florida. They tell us the same thing. Their restoration depends entirely on power restoration. Once you get electricity back in your house, you should immediately get your cable back. If you don't, that could mean that there's a supply box in your neighborhood that was damaged somehow. And what they're asking you to do is, if that's the case, if you get power but you don't get your cable back, call the customer service line. That number should be on your cable bill. Call them and report it. As for satellite service, we're still trying to get good information from them, but I can tell you someone at work called Dish about her service, and they told her that they couldn't get anybody out on a service call until September 19th. But those are luxuries. Power is a different story. That remains one of the big stories in the aftermath of Katrina. This is one of 12 staging areas FPNL has. They promise us that at 4 o'clock they will have more information, more precise information as to when people in particular neighborhoods will have their power back on. They will post it on their website, fpnl.com. They will put it on their hotline, 1-800-4-OUTAGE, and you can always find out right here on CBS 4 News. For now, live at the Orange Bowl, Ileana Varela, CBS 4 News.
Meantime, Broward County Public Schools reopened today, while Miami-Dade Public Schools remain closed. There is still no word on whether or not Miami-Dade schools will reopen tomorrow. As soon as we find out that information, we will let you know.
Residents are still cleaning up days after Katrina unleashed heavy winds and rains on South Florida. CBS 4's Leave Davalos live in Country Walk with the latest today. Leave.
Well, this is a scene here in Country Walk, where, as you can see, it looks like many neighborhoods after Hurricane Katrina roared through. This morning, we spotted Miami-Dade water and power crews also checking things out here in this area. Folks were very lucky. They never lost power, but as you can see, trees up and down the streets of this neighborhood were blown over by the wind, some landing on top of fences and houses, but nothing like the damage this community suffered back in 1993 when Hurricane Andrew devastated this area, as well as the Homestead area. Now, over the weekend, folks in South Dade cleaned up as much as they could, bringing out their chainsaws and trying to remove all the debris. Since Friday, the county tells us that it has removed up to 5,000 tons of debris throughout the county, and crews are out today in force. Trash pickup is on regular schedule and bulk pickup is on extended schedule. Now this time around, Homestead, also hit hard by Andrew, got away with flooding and some wind damage. Now we are told that that water is starting to recede in the Homestead, Cutler Ridge and Naranja area, whereas you remember that over the weekend they did have a lot of flooding. All main roadways and main arteries in that area are also back open. Slowly but surely, things are looking better here in this area as the cleanup continues this Monday. We're live in Country Walk. Lee Davalo, CBS 4 News.
And Governor Jeb Bush holding a mid-morning news conference to update what's going on as South Florida recovers from Hurricane Katrina. The governor warning South Floridians about the importance of generator safety after 2 deaths in Davie Saturday from carbon monoxide poisoning.
Those 2 deaths that occurred because a generator was being used inside of one's home. It is not appropriate to use generators, just as it wouldn't make sense to drive your car into your house and keep the car turned on. It doesn't make any sense at all to use a generator inside as well.
There have been 33 confirmed cases of carbon monoxide poisoning since Katrina struck South Florida last Thursday.
Well, Neighbors for Neighbors is helping residents in South Miami-Dade, providing essential supplies to those who are in need. CBS 4's Nefertiti Jaquez is live in Homestead, where the relief efforts are well underway. Nef?
Good afternoon, Elliot. Now, while it's been 4 days since Katrina hit South Florida, many people are rebuilding, but others are still in need of some help.
How many families? ¿Cuántas familias? Dos familias.
Folks are still sweaty and anxious from Katrina's swipe across South Florida. Storm-weary, many of them still without power, wait in line today in Homestead for some welcome relief.
Thank you. We weren't prepared for what happened. It's been a little scary. It brings back a lot of memories of Andrew.
So as we all know, a helping hand in times of need goes a long way. So CBS 4's Neighbors for Neighbors, alongside FarmShare, a nonprofit relief organization, teamed up to help distribute the much-needed help.
We're here today because with the cooperation of other donors, Neighbors for Neighbors and FarmShare have pre-packed 1,000 boxes for hurricane relief. We have food, and then we have supplies like toothpaste and toothbrushes and cleaning supplies and soup and milk and things like that.
In the end, both young and old, everyone left a little more relieved and appreciative of the efforts. Now, if you would like to help those in need or need some help yourself, give Neighbors for Neighbors a call at that number at the bottom, on your screen, 305-597-4404. That's the very latest in Homestead. Nefertiti Jaquez, CBS 4 News.
We have an opportunity now to talk to CBS 4's Bryan Andrews. He is hunkered down in a hotel in New Orleans. Bryan, how are you doing? What's your situation like right now? Bryan, can you hear us?
We may have once again lost communications with Bryan Andrews in New Orleans. Angela, it's been such a touchy situation.
Yes.
They're very difficult to establish communication, but we're not going to give up. We're going to try to get Bryan Andrews on the phone. Don't forget to keep it right here. Your weather station has continuing coverage of Hurricane Katrina all day long, and tonight on CBS 4 News, first at 5.
And next on CBS 4 News at noon, we continue to cover Hurricane Katrina for you. You're looking at some pictures now from Pensacola, Florida. It looks like a blizzard, but that's heavy rains coming down.
Back here in South Florida, 2 children are struck in the street and angry eyewitnesses who violently detained the driver. More on CBS 4 News at noon when we come back.
We wanted to save money, so we called Buy Owner.
They took care of things we didn't even realize would come up.
The second person that saw the house bought it.
With Buy Owner's help, we filled out the contract right here with the buyer.
And we saved $15,000. Thanks, Buy Owner.
Thanks, Buy Owner.
Want more
more morning news with half the commercials starting September 12th. That's just what you'll get from CBS 4 News.
Get more big news.
With less commercials.
More developing stories.
With less commercials.
More weather and traffic.
With less commercials.
More reports to keep you healthy and to help you save money, too.
Get more morning news with half the commercials.
And get more of the news you want right now.
Only on CBS 4 News this morning. Weekdays from 5 to 7 starting September 12th.
AvMed Medicare Preferred is the affordable way to get quality health care.
AvMed is not for profit, so it's not like we're trying to get money for our stockholders or anything like that. That's not what our goal is. We want to make sure that we can give back to our members as much as possible.
Get answers when you want them 24/7.
Our nurses are registered nurses, so they have the medical background so they can speak to you in medical terms.
If you need anything extra or you need anybody to assist you, we're just a phone call away.
We make it fast and easy to see a specialist.
Now, if you need a referral, no more paper. You get the name of the physician, you call and get an appointment.
We go that extra mile for our members.
Call 1-888-642-0368 for more information about AvMed Medicare Preferred and get your free government guide to Medicare's new coverage.
AvMed, it's more than what we do.
It's the way we do it. Putting our customers first.
Closed captioning sponsored by City Furniture, now offering same-day delivery 7 days a week.
Buyer rep explained our options completely.
We got a call from the eventual buyer the next day.
People actually offered more than our asking price.
We signed the contract within a week.
And saved over $20,000.
Thanks, buy owner.
Thanks, buy owner.
We continue our coverage of Hurricane Katrina, which is now a Category 3 storm. Luckily, it appears to be weakening. That's good news for the folks along the Gulf Coast of the United States. These are live pictures right now from Biloxi, Mississippi. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the Comfort Inn there, and I've been watching this same area for several hours now, and it's becoming more and more flooded. I started looking at this same picture at about 5 this morning, and those cars are getting a little more submerged, but
yeah, this is on the eastern side of the eye wall where the storm surge could reach 15 to 20 feet, so a major concern there.
Major concern there. Back here at home, though, 2 children are hurt when a car plows into them, and neighbors say the driver tried to take off.
But it's what they did next to make sure he didn't get away we want to tell you about. CBS 4's Robin Kish joins us now with the details. Robin?
The 2 children are recovering from their injuries this noon after a frightening car crash in Bryan. Witnesses say a BMW, there you see it, rounded a curve at Southwest 100th Avenue and Banyan Street, where a group of children were playing and then slammed into a parked car. An 11-year-old and a younger girl were hit. The older child was transported by air rescue to Miami Children's Hospital with what appeared to be a broken leg. The other girl suffered a broken tooth. One witness says the driver was traveling way too fast, then after the accident tried to flee the scene.
He couldn't keep control of the car, and this car here, the Honda, was parked right here, and we had kids outside, and they just crashed into the car. They ended up over there, and then they tried to run, and we had to apprehend them.
They didn't get away. Witnesses say the accident could have been a lot worse. They complain drivers go too fast in their residential neighborhood, and we've just learned from Miami-Dade police that the driver is being charged with running a stop sign and failing to have his vehicle under control. Robin Kish, CBS 4 News.
Robin, thank you. I want to go now to Bryan Norcross, who's going to fill us in on the latest on the storm. And Bryan, it looks like a few miles made a big difference of good news for the folks in New Orleans, but not for the folks in other parts of the east, right?
Some of the folks in New Orleans, the east side of New Orleans, St. Bernard's Parish it's called, which is the eastern suburbs outside the levee. Now they're talking about water in the second floors of houses there. They have untold number of people on the roofs, unable to rescue them until maybe 3 o'clock this afternoon before they can get anybody in there. And also on the north side, which is the big levee on Lake Pontchartrain, apparently the waves have come over that. It has not breached, but the waves have come over and they have water into that part of the city from the lake. So we're just getting reports in. So it's not that nothing happened in New Orleans. It's just that it didn't get the worst that it could possibly get, right? So we expect serious damage and loss of life in New Orleans from this hurricane. All right, it's 89 and super steamy outside. As you know, stickiness scale says 8.5. That's extra steamy. The winds out of the southeast at 12, gusting to 18. and no rain here today, and I don't think we're going to have much. Here you see on the radar, let's take a look at the radar, and we put it into motion going back to 1 a.m., and we see some pretty good showers moving up from the north. A couple moved into the Keys. Here you see a few offshore here. That's about it for now, and maybe one or two later on. There's the hurricane. Now watch as it comes ashore and moves in, and notice that the air over here is relatively dry, but there it goes just east of New Orleans, but all the way over into Florida Panhandle here, the weather is very bad. So we're going to continue to be generally under the influence of the outside of the hurricane, where the weather is very often good. As you know, well around the hurricane, especially a strong one, the weather is good. So for us, hot and humid, just passing storms today. The true view actually is looking pretty good. And for tomorrow, now a mixture of sun and clouds. So before Wednesday, a mixture of sun and clouds and just some passing storms. No real big deal. But by the end of the week, more moisture comes in, so a better chance of storms. Okay, the forecast in detail tonight looks like this. Extra steamy, just passing storms, and down to 81. Tomorrow, kind of steamy sunshine again, and only a few storms, high up to 92. Boaters winds out of the south 10 to 15 knots today. And looking ahead, the storm chance will increase as we get toward the end of the week, and typical August summertime weather is coming up.
Bryan Norcross, thank you so much. If you are a Young and the Restless fan, here's a programming note for you. Thursday's episode, of course, was preempted because of Hurricane Katrina coverage. That episode will air today right after this newscast. Friday's and today's scheduled episodes will air back-to-back Tuesday morning starting at 2:07 a.m., so set your VCRs or your TiVos.
And don't forget to keep it right here, your weather station, for continuing coverage of Hurricane Katrina all day long and tonight on CBS 4 News, first at 5. And that's going to do it for CBS 4 News at noon. Thanks so much for watching.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I've driven to my best friend.